Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GCD. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Boom! Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you live from my studio/RV dining room, located directly inside America. Welcome back, folks of the interwebs. Once again, your host, JJ Vance here. Oops, that's not it. Host of Operation GCD, and perhaps more notably, not the vice president. Anyhow, welcome back, folks. I will be your pilot and navigator for tonight's shenanigan infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. And not gonna lie to you, folks, got a real barn burner here on deck for y'all tonight. The Operation PATCON, Idaho Nazis, domestic terror campaigns for multiple decades, running from the 80s through probably now, involving folks that are associated with Northern Idaho white nationalists, in and around the precise area where three of the victims hail from in the Idaho 4 murders. And also one of those victims has a lot of Nazi connections, it seems like, within her family, and outlaw biker gangs. So is it by coincidence that we see folks like Mark Furman, Nazi felon, former LAPD detective from the OJ Simpson case, disgraced detective, retired to that same precise area? And in fact, authors of those books on Furman and the Simpson case would indicate this is not new information. They would indicate that Furman was connected to that Hayden Lake white nationalist compound dating back to the early 1980s, when a domestic terror campaign was hatched then, approximately 10 years prior to the Nicole Brown Simpson murder. So a lot of these things really don't get discussed, but these things all have connections through Oklahoma City, Waco, other domestic terror campaigns of white nationalist variety, and one of the subjects I find most intriguing, a serial killer named Israel Keys. So on that note, folks of the interwebs, thanks for joining us here tonight to get a little GCD, and welcome our guest, Troublemaker Jonah, to discuss these matters.
Yeah.
And, he's already been educating me on some some of these elements of these matters that I was unfamiliar with. So I appreciate your time, sir, and welcome back to Operation GCD.
Yeah, well, I've said this before. I don't hide my past. I may have I may have met one or two of the guys of the order when they got out. I may have spoke with them directly over the internet when I was still active into all that shit.
No
Young
shit.
kid, hated the
Okay.
world. David Lane, of course, who is of fame of creating the 14 words. If you don't know that one, it's we must secure the existence of our race in the future for white children. That's the 1488. That's used by all of the Nazis, National Socialists, skinheads, whatever you call it, right?
Sure.
So I met his daughter
That's
Katya as a teenager while he was
so
still in
is that
custody.
1488? Is that a universal code of sorts you're saying?
Yeah, so 14 is the 14 words, which comes from David Lane. It's that saying I just said. It's pretty much shared by everyone. And then 88, and that actually goes back to World War II prisoner of war camps where they were unallowed to say Heil Hitler. So they used to
Right.
say 8,
Right.
8, H to like the Nazi POWs. So allegedly that's where it originates. I wasn't there, so I ain't going to say for a fact because I don't believe a fucking thing that these people tell me. This
Right.
mainstream, but that's allegedly where it originates. So someone tells
Well,
me
can you?
differently, I'll be like, yeah, cool. Give a source, and I'll believe you.
Well, I'm right there with you, sir, on that one. I appreciate your the way you look at things like that. Before we get any further into these matters, would you offer a brief introduction of your some of your work and some of your show folks can find you at?
I was on your show about 4 weeks ago. I was
That's
on with
true. We had
Clayton,
a
not
real
the
barn
last
burner.
Saturday. I was on with Clayton, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before last, and I was tripping balls on shrooms for fucking 4 hours. It was hilarious.
I'm gonna have to check that one out. Clint was just
Yeah,
on last week here for Third World Assassin. We were doing some Knights Templar stuff, so he's always an enjoyable conversation.
he messaged me. He's like, and I was like, hey, I'm tripping balls, but I'm good to go.
Right. And you're
These guys.
also hosting your own show, right?
No, so Raven Kiefer, him and I usually do a weekly. His schedule has been a little hectic lately, so I don't think we've done like the last 3 or 4 weeks. So we might record tonight. I haven't heard back from, but my data's off, so I sent an email, but I haven't checked the email either, so that might be on me. We do that.
I'll make sure I get a
There's
link
probably
in for
about
your all's
80.
previous work, your all's channel for
Yeah,
your previous work, and then any future works folks can check out for sure. Because
yeah,
you
yeah.
I definitely appreciate the way you look at these subjects because again we've already seen some comments here in the chat, and you and I have discussed it. Like I feel like much like myself, you are interested in subjects that people are not talking about, right? Like you can realize that this is a problem and say like, well, this is a subject should probably get talked about because for whatever reason, despite these being rooted in fact, no one's talking about these things.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is though too, and I've done this topic once or twice before, so maybe someone's heard it, maybe they haven't. But when people ask me like, "Oh, how'd you get into conspiracies?" It's like, I came from a really shitty home life. Put it this way: when I ended up writing off my own mother for reasons that were legitimate. Pretty much my entire family told I joined the Michigan militia right after Oklahoma City because I wasn't contacting any of them. So, I mean, I've been personal connections to this story. So, like, when I'm bringing this up, some of it's like, well, I messaged you an hour ago. I'm like, oh shit, my laptop won't turn on. Let me put together some slides, and I did like 20 something slides, just like
Yeah.
screenshots in under an hour. So that's a topic I know quite
No,
well.
I mean, I appreciate that, sir. So you encountered some of these skinhead. You were formerly in some skinhead circles. This is dating back to the mid '90s, and you also did some militia stuff, and you crossed paths with these folks of the order in both of those environments, even in Michigan, huh? As far away as Michigan from Idaho.
No, not in Michigan. So actually, David Lane's daughter. Anyone who's like goes back into the archives, there was a band called Rahowa, which was that's COT short for racial holy war. That's the name of the band. But the lead singer, guitarist, or whatever his name was, George Birdie. He ran a record label, which to me, like as I'm older, it's like, and CNN is giving away their PO box. That's how I found my first record through them by CNN PO box on air. So
Sure.
it's almost like it's almost like it was part of PATCON. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I was like, did you feel like you had saw the machinations of a federal operation when you were seeing these things then, or was this something you
No,
realized
not
later?
then. Not then. As I got older, I'm like, wait a minute.
Sure.
A lot of this is just, it's as you get into it, you start to get knowledge. You start to have recurrences, synchronicities, and let's just go ahead here. I'm gonna blow your mind on a little thought experiment, right? But
Let's do it. So before we do
Ruby
that, then,
Ridge.
who's David Lane? I don't know David Lane. Who is that?
David Lane was one of the order. I think he had the second most years sentenced for the order. I think it was second
Okay.
most. I want to say off the top of my head, he had 200
Yep.
plus years.
I see that. You're right.
So,
190 years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and the violation of civil rights of Alan Berg. That's the radio talk show host that was murdered by the order in 1984, part of their domestic terror campaign. And it's that murder that got the author of one of those books about the OJ Simpson trial, Mark Furman, got him involved in it because he wrote a book, Stephen Singular, about that murder there in Denver in 84. And then he was contacted by, he made connections at the time. And then, in the LA County District Attorney's Office, and they would contact him later, 10 years later, and let him know in August of 94, hey, that people you wrote a book about, Mark Furman's part of their group, and they're behind the OJ Simpson or Nicole Brown Simpson, Ron Goldman murder. So this guy was at the top of that. Huh? He's one of the main characters, huh?
Well, Robert J. Matthews was Robert J. Matthews is the one who's recognized. Pretty much, it's like pretty much is the leader. He was the head. He was a very eloquent speaker, so to speak. He definitely was known for his ability to give speeches, and he was considered the ringleader. Now, the whole thing with the order, I would say at some point it was definitely a Fed operation. I don't know what when it became one, but
Right,
you know how they brought them down, right? You know what they brought them down.
Was it October, around October of 84 in a shootout up there, right?
No, December 8th of 1984 is the shootout that killed it. Oh no, you're talking. Yep. Yeah. So that shootout with the armored car. But do you know what the piece of evidence that put them on to who the order was?
Was there a gun left somewhere, right? Something to that effect?
Yeah, a personal pistol registered in Bob Matthews' name.
Yeah,
was left in the armored car.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, you're a gun runner.
Kind of suspect.
You're a gun runner, but you leave your personal little pistol in the truck, right? Sounds about right.
For sure, and that seems to be besides the ardent white nationalist attitudes of these folks, the underlying connecting principles appears to be drug running, gun running, and possibly human trafficking as well, right?
I mean, I've never seen any of that in any of the stuff that I was in. A lot of times within the skinhead stuff, I'll be honest, a lot of them would, not, I should say a lot, but there was enough that would be like, hey, no drugs. Then when you all got together, like the concerts or whatever, everyone was sober, but then everyone knew certain people were known to indulge on their own personal time at home or whatever, right? So
I hear you. So it sounds like what you're saying is there might be a delineation between these Nazi organizations where some of the outlaw biker gangs may be doing the drug stuff, but these fellows right here are doing more of the robberies and the gun trafficking.
Again, too, I mean, I guess as a Canadian, I'm like particular to the gun trafficking, and again, I wouldn't even say that's a crime because who cares? I mean, that's what the whole Weaver situation starts off on, right?
I think the only reason I think it's relevant. The only thing I think is relevant, Jonah, is the connections with the Waco situation and the gun dealing going on, even amongst the cult members there. They were doing a lot of gun trafficking out of that compound, as I'm sure you know. And then you look at the Kehoe brothers, which seem to be part of this 10-year anniversary nationwide domestic terror campaign. They're out there robbing stuff. They murder a federal firearms licensee in Arkansas and steal a bunch of guns there. You know what I mean? So and you look at the order here, right? They just made the film about what they steal about $4 million worth of bank robberies on their terror run in '84,
which is really funny. Which is really
a lot
funny.
of money, dude.
I'm gonna do a little foreshadowing. Did you know that during Oklahoma City bombing, they had satellite surveillance by the CIA and DOD on American soil, and it involved bank robberies?
No
Foreshadowing.
Shit.
Foreshadowing.
No shit. Well, one of these bank robberies we're speaking of, one of these bank robberies we're speaking of actually popped off, in my opinion. It's part of that same campaign. It happens in and around the same time the Kehoe brothers get into that infamous shootout just north of Cincinnati, right? So
there was also Gordon Call too, right? And I think that was just before. Gordon Call was just before the order, and the order was part of a response to the Gordon Call incident. And I believe that's K. I'm doing this off the top of my head. I believe it's KAHL. If anyone wants to look up the while we're on.
I got it right here. I'll bring it up in a minute. Yeah, that's interesting because he dies in '83, huh? So
yep.
So the during the same time where we see this 10-year anniversary from the '84 events, the millions of dollars robbed, a lot of other domestic terror campaigns by this group, culminating in the murder of Alan Berg and this pistol being left in an armored truck that they were, robbing folks with and running guns. So all that does seem suspect. But, at that very same time, you got the Kehoe brothers, 10 years. So the 10-year anniversary of that is allegedly starts off with the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. And then connected to that, you see the Kehoe brothers and all their activities I was just mentioning. And then you also see this one, it's a really, no one really talks about it. It was contemporary to the North Hollywood bank shootout. So, that's kind of the first time law enforcement was engaging assailants with high-powered rifles, right?
Yeah, the full body armored, right?
Yeah.
The Armenians.
Yeah, so a couple years prior, and I think it's 2 years prior, and about 45 miles south of the Kehoe brothers shootout, right, the mall right next to where I grew up there, just outside Cincinnati, and where I spent my teenagers. I'm living there at the time, right? I can almost see the mall from my house if it weren't for some trees. And there's three men. There's a bank in the parking lot of the mall, Key Bank. 3 men in armor and high powered rifles in a very North Hollywood style shootout situation run into that bank and rob it, I think, for $200,000. They get into a firefight with the locals in the parking lot, right? Just like the Kehoe brothers, right? And they're firing indiscriminately in parking lots of public people, right? That's the same thing the Kehoe brothers would do. And these people got away. Yep. No one's ever solved this robbery. No one's ever really investigated this robbery. It's one of the weirdest bank robberies in the history of America.
Well, I'm just thinking outside the box again, too. I would have been like, man, if to be honest, I would have been like a lowly foot soldier or whatever back in the day. I was only like 14 through like maybe 22, 24, something like that. But I mean, if we're talking about bank robberies, I mean, let's just think about who's involved with Nugent Hand Bank, BCCI.
Have you been reading my emails, sir? Have you been reading my emails, Jonah? That's precisely the draft I'd come up with as an outline. I was going to ask you about that because I do see connections between that and the Randy Weaver incident. So, but before we get all down that whole narrative, you wanted to do a thought exercise on that Ruby Ridge thing.
Yeah. Right? So I did actually. So Randy Weaver, location Ruby Ridge. The band was called Racial Holy War, but then you also had Patriot Conspiracy, where the government is attacking white nationalists, blah, blah, blah. 1955, Little Rock, Arkansas. Ruby Bridges. Is that a synchronicity, or is that a little Easter egg left for us by the operation?
That's pretty on the nose, right?
Seems very suspicious. That's just
I totally agree. But, I mean, I almost feel like sometimes the people that run these operations are trolling us, right? I almost feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, actually, while we're here, I'm gonna actually go ahead and give a quick shout out. And have you ever heard of Cody Snellgrass? Snelgras.
Yes, sir. Didn't he allege to be part of Iran-Contra Project 40?
He alleged he was offered the contract for the Oklahoma City bombing. He has a
Right.
fantastic self-edited book or self-published book with Ole Domagard. I highly recommend it for everyone. It's called OKC Choosing the Light. So,
Yeah,
fantastic book.
And they recruited him from the team of these people that were already kind of their assassin network of Iran-Contra, right?
Yeah, he was Mina, all of that too.
And he knew Barry Steele, and that kind of makes sense, right? With this whole connection to a lot of these things with these government operations. I think a lot of them. You were mentioning the Green Berets. I think a lot of these operations within the Special Forces community operate the same way Barry Steele did. The infamous Iran-Contra drug smuggling pilot there for the Medellin cartel drugs to Mina, Arkansas, who was in the same, happened to be in the same Civil Air Patrol unit as Lee Harvey Oswald, and their leader was David Ferry. You know what I mean? That's mere coincidence. But Barry Steele would be an operative of the 20th Special Forces Group. Oh, did you not know that? They were in the same Civil Air Patrol?
No, I didn't know that directly, but
dude, there's a photograph. There's a photograph of them all.
Speaking of mere coincidences, let's start on slide 1. We'll go through it quickly, maybe to about 7, I think it is. But you're gonna have some fun with this.
So, would you agree with me that in large part it seems that these Special Forces operations we're saying you're connected to this even are actually operating through what's known as the 20 Special Forces Group?
I don't know about it. I wouldn't say the 20 Special Forces for sure because I'm Canadian and I'm not going to try to speak outside of my lane. But I'm going to give you 2 examples.
Okay, go ahead.
If you pull up the slides, we'll go through it real quick here. I'll give you some of the quick details, and I'll give you 2 examples, including, you'll see.
Well, my point to that is the 20th Special Forces is a unit out of their National Guard unit, our Army Special Forces out of Alabama, but their administrative control is out of Fort Bragg. So we see all of these hood rat Special Forces out of Fort Bragg, but it seems to be like that they're using the 20th Special Forces as that component which to do these things, right? And it might be a posse comitatus thing, right? It might be a posse comitatus thing. They're just trying to avoid any of that stuff, legally speaking. I don't know. But Barry Steele was 20th Special Forces, and he ain't the only one.
No, it might also just be, McVeigh says that he was recruited and sheep dipped, right? So, that might be sheep dipping.
That was my next point, is I think McVeigh was in the 20th Special Forces.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to, if you go through the first 7 slides that I have, I'll read through them. Most of them are going to be just straight from the FOIA from Operation PATCON, which was actually, you might recognize the name of the group, the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem.
Yeah, my dude Recluse has kind of educated me on this specific topic relative to this specific order, but please continue. It's a very interesting, weird dynamic, isn't it?
We'll get back to their other name later on because this is the documents here. But this is the original PATCON in '93. So it's if you go to the next page, so that one just shows the name of the group, which is Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem and some others. The American Pistol Rifle Association, which was members of the order did belong to. But again, too, I think that's actually just like a civil rights firearm organization, but they try to paint it as more.
Yeah. And then if I may just look here where this got routed from, I'm just curious to know that logistics here. So it looks like it originated in Knoxville. That's strange, right?
No, not with the PATCON one. So there's PATCON 2, which I didn't get into, and then they started using under my consideration, they started using other operation names, but I don't really think it went away. At least not under the Clinton Reno Free connection. And again, I sent you a fantastic document created by Louis III called Megiddo, which is really funny because, he's the director of the FBI, but he's got a document published while he's the director of FBI called Megiddo, which obviously goes back to 3,500 or 1,000 something 500 BC. I forget the numbers. But anyways, it goes back to Israel back in the Old Testament. And there's an entire chapter in that short 30-page document about Jerusalem and the Y2K and the militias. But I didn't really get time to screenshot that because, like I said, my laptop fried today.
Well, I think you just presented a follow-up show to this story because that all sounds very interesting. I'm such a big fan of history of that area and relative to these chivalric orders here, these knighthoods, right? So the
yeah.
it is a big interest of mine. So you've hit on some hot topics for me. But so what we're seeing here is this memorandum being sent from FBI Knoxville's office to the director, also copied to Birmingham, Los Angeles, an unidentified FBI office as they redacted, and then the San Antonio office, right, as routine. So these to me, that says these offices are already operating within this program of operations, and this is just routine updates, right? So Birmingham, that's an interesting location. I believe that is the home of the Special Forces Group.
And you're going to see the only conviction that they got, Contra. Oh wait, I'm foreshadowing again. Let's just go to the next page. So this one here, again, there's a bunch of information on there, but I just sort of wanted to pull this up to show that it has the name PATCON in it. So this is the official documents, FOIA documents from PATCON. Actually, it's the FOIA documents for the Sovereign Order of St. John, which is really funny because it also includes a previous that we're going to jump into real quick, but it's completely off topic. But since it's all one group, it's quite interesting when it comes up. But let's go ahead. Next page.
Yeah. I just wanted to double check. The operational headquarters of the 20th Special Forces Group is indeed Birmingham, Alabama. Their administrative control headquarters is at Fort Bragg.
Okay.
Yeah, they fall under the 7th Special Forces Group.
Okay, awesome.
Well, I just want to point that out because on that note, real quick, one of the people that is perpetrating the propaganda campaign against suspect Brian Koberger in the Idaho 4 case who I've demonstrated on previous shows that this individual is lying about his story of how he knew Koberger and whether or not he's lying about the rest of the stuff. I presume he is. On that basis alone, his foundational story is bullshit. His father is the retired Command Sergeant Major of the 7th Special Forces Group who commands the 20th Special Forces.
Well, isn't one or two of the New Year's Eve bombers also out of that group of some sort? I don't know the numbers. I don't. Like you say, I'm Canadian, so I don't pay that much attention to the U.S. military.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the fellow was out of 10th Group at Fort Carson. But let me double check that while I bring up the next slide.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at this one here, I just want to look at here again. So it says for info, Los Angeles information concerning captioned organization. So it sounds like that Los Angeles sent them a request like, hey, we need some information on these folks.
Yeah.
And it mentions here numerous UCOs, right?
Yeah. And you'll see as I go down, you'll see there's one about PATCON UCA. Not this one, but the PATCON 2, which was the Texas State Military Infantry or something like that, is a militia group. I think I forget the exact name, but it's Texas something. If I'm not mistaken, that one they use UCA, so undercover agent, and SPLC UCA.
Oh, so we got some different codes going on amongst these undercovers, do we?
No. SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, MODs.
That's what I'm saying. Are they using somebody within their organization as a UCO? Is what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, but they're listed as a UCA, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
But that'd be PATCON too. But that's something that can be looked into. And if I'm wrong, hey, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter, Troublemaker Jonah, and tell me, hey, fuck that, you got it wrong, and I'll come on and apologize.
It makes sense they would have people in the Southern Poverty Law Center. They got to control the narrative, and they're the counterpoint to all this nonsense, are they not?
Yeah.
So
the
next one that also seems apparent to me is I just one quick
thing.
One thing that seems apparent to me, and I saw a quote or statement in the chat earlier. I wanted to just point out. They said that this was identical to the Whitmer situation. I agree. Right. This was a framework they then outlaid for the quote unquote kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer, where it's like 20 of the 23 folks are either feds or UCOs. Right.
Wait. Was that Merrick Garland? Foreshadow.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Was that Merrick Garland? Oh my God!
Oh my goodness! What
my
are we going to
pearls.
do with this
My
guy who's been
pearls.
running these campaigns, huh? So Merrick Garland's running campaigns,
Yeah.
94 of this nature, all the way through 2020, huh?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Sounds like a real stand-up guy, that
piece of
Merrick
shit.
Garland.
Sounds like, treason is a viable charge, but I'm not American, so I can't really say.
I like that idea, though. I like that idea.
Yeah. So I highlighted up one box there real quick. Yeah.
And it says UCO Domestic Security. That's the title, right? Group 1.
Yeah.
Meaning there's more than one group.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But if you look down at the bottom and then the second page completed, you're going to see where they pretty much, in my opinion, confirm that a special operations soldier is a undercover agent. But I'll let you read it.
Yeah. As a recipient offices are aware, again, this is the Knoxville sending out communications to all the recipient field offices that are part of this operation. I'm deeply curious to know which field office is not being listed here, and it's redacted continually here. And I would assure you that's going to be the Indianapolis field office. I would put money on it.
I would say in this situation, I would say it's probably Oklahoma City, because in that time they had Elohim City that was up and running, where they had Andreas Strassmeyer, whether Strasburger, or what the fuck his name is, that stupid German whose father was the head of all German intelligence, who was John Doe number 2. Fuck you, Merrick Garland.
That's a very reasonable point you make, and a very logical argument, sir. Let me offer you this one in response. It's far more anointed. So Elvis Presley was an undercover agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigations. He had numerous agents on his tour for over 2 years, I believe it was, preceding his death. The folks they were investigating the day after he dies, those folks get indicted, right? So that investigation ran out of the Indianapolis field office, which the largest would then spawn into the largest multi-field office investigation in FBI history to this day. And I still think it's going on. I still think it might be going on today. However, what I think is going, so I know that investigation out of Memphis run out of through Tennessee, but out of the headquarters out of the operation was Indianapolis field office. They ran its Operation Fountain Pen. That then rolls over into Operation Abscam, right? Busting all the politicians and crooked politicians in around New York City, New Jersey, right? As seen in the film American Hustle, right? In recent years, you know, like Hollywood did The Order. They like telling these stories in Hollywood. So I think that then rolls over into cocaine charges surrounding such things as John DeLorean. That's slightly different story altogether. But what I'm saying is I can see a logical order of activities, no pun intended, from that operations there can roll into these things that we're describing here today. So I'm very curious to understand what they're blocking out. It could be Oklahoma City, obviously. I'm just saying, like, I have suspicions there's a lot of shit going on around that situation. As Operation PATCON.
The only reason I say Oklahoma City is I know that they had Elohim City. That's Elohim. You know, Elohim from the Bible. So Elohim City in Oklahoma, right? It was a small little town where it was nothing but like white separatists, and it was an operation from as far as. And Andreas Strassmeyer, who was John Doe number 2, at least that's my opinion. You know, they never brought him up in trial because he didn't exist. But you know, they did.
When you're saying that CIA stuff, that's the first thing that came to mind when you said they had CIA coverage, satellites and stuff, right? Because if I'm not mistaken, he's documented as an operative. He was the son of an SS officer, if I'm not mistaken. No,
he is the son of the head of the DGE or whatever the fucking the Nazi one, the German one. But
I thought his father was the chief of staff for.
If we get back to that.
Yeah, sure, not a problem. But we'll
get into that. German.
I thought he was the chief of staff for.
Go ahead.
One of the ranking Nazis. I'll find it in a second. I got a clip on it. We'll watch it later here.
He's the head of German intelligence.
Yeah, his dad was the chief of staff for the head of German intelligence. Is that what I'm thinking of? Okay. So this one's interesting. Then we'll back to this one real quick. So as recipient officers are
Yeah,
aware,
the head of German intelligence, like I said.
well, that's a steep connection to spooky activities. But
Yeah.
Is Grady? Here's Grady. Who's Grady? Is that Dr. John Grady? Who's this guy? Oh, the guy running the
Thomas Thomas Grady. He was the head of the. Yeah, he's the head of the St. John Order of, the Sovereign Order of St. John, or the Knights of Malta. Oh shit! I gave the name away.
So he's the one informing the FBI that the Order of St. John, which also is known as the AFRA, he's saying
no,
go ahead.
He's the one that's the head suspect. Sorry, I cut and pasted there's like 200 plus documents below. So he's the chief suspect. So he's the one that the pen tap is on. He's the one that the pen register is on. He's the one the UCAs are on. So that's why they name him. But
interesting. What's his?
You'll see who as we get. Dr. Thomas Grady. I can't remember his background, but if you look up Thomas L. Grady, I'll probably say
John L. Grady or John, right? John L. Grady.
Thomas L. Grady. Thomas.
Well, they got him listed as John.
It might be John actually. Yeah, okay. John, you're right. I'm horrible with names.
I could have seen it as a typo because they're doing St. John, so I didn't know if the FBI messed that up.
Yeah.
So he's the source. He's the subject of their investigation. So it says source advised that an attendant at this conference of the St. John Order there will be the former blank, and also attending this conference will be the retired blank.
Now go to the next page, and we'll see who that is.
So
they blocked his name out.
So these are the undercover operatives. It sounds like of the teams. Maybe is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah. Well, so the retired U.S. Marine Corps, I think it is. But you go to the next page, you'll see that they say that. And then the next page.
In the negotiation. This one?
Yeah.
Yep. Blank was instrumental in the negotiation in the recent surrender of Randy Weaver. Well, that's interesting. Weaver was the subject who barricaded himself in the shooting incident in Naples, Idaho. Also known as Ruby Ridge.
Grits.
This was Bo Grits?
Bo Grits.
No shit.
Retired. Who was instrumental was Bo Grits. He walked up to a fucking door and knocked and got Weaver to turn himself in.
Right. So, but that is who they're mentioning here. Then I mean that makes sense. So who's the Who is the former? He's the retired. So who's the former listed here?
I'm not 100% on that one. So obviously they had other active agents that are in there, right? Could be. Actually, that could be a pretty good guess. I mean,
that's my guess, right?
It's hard to. Yeah, it would surprise me now that you brought it up, but I never thought of that before, right? Because they don't list any of it is, right?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a Mad Libs, right? But my guess would be McVeigh.
Yeah. So I brought up Bo Grits.
We should do a Mad Libs of all these redacted things because obviously you have some good ideas. I have some good ideas. You know, Oklahoma City office, right? I'm thinking Indianapolis office. You know, you got a different fill in for that blank than I do. So that's why we have these conversations. I always enjoy your details. So we just Bo Grits was pretty important in Special Forces, right? He's still alive. Shit, I didn't realize that.
I want you to go to the second page. Well, we can look up his history there and see what. But if you go down to, or you just brought up his Wikipedia, right?
Yeah, this is the thing I thought was important.
No. What I think is important, if you go under under his military career.
Well, I'm saying relative to our conversation, he's got roots in Oklahoma, right?
Okay, yeah. But if you go to, I just want you to really see, if you go to his military career.
Yes, sir, right here.
And it says claims with video evidence. No. Claims with video evidence. I think it's the bottom of the third paragraph, maybe.
Oh, well, let me just as we're cruising along, let me just hit this real quick. Among the successful missions was the retrieval of a black box from a downed Lockheed U-2 spy plane in enemy territory in Cambodia in December of 1966. That's interesting relative to a lot of the activities surrounding the JFK situation with Lee Harvey Oswald and Kerry Thornley. They're both and the other guy. The guy that they actually called to the House Select Committee, Warbell's underling. You know what I'm talking about? Mitch Warbell's sidekick. He claimed that him and
I forget the name though.
He claimed that him and Warbell were training the anti-Castro Cubans, right, in Lake Pontchartrain, Louisiana, along with So,
was that Felix? See, the one that's coming in my head is Felix Castro, or the one from Kiki Camarena, but he's obviously tied to Iran Contra. But that's just coming to my head because I know that I hate that guy too, right? You see all the things he was in, and it's like,
I'll think of this guy's
name. No,
this dude was a
Castro. Felix. Go ahead.
No, this guy was a technical consultant on the JFK film Revolver Stone. He was called in from the House Select Committee. I think he pled the fifth. I think he pled the fifth. Like his boss, Mitch Warbell, Mitch the fifth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You mean the John McCoy commission?
Which commission is this?
The Warren. I call it the John McCoy.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I mean that's a better description of it, right?
Like, who's the famous quote from? Oh, we have a single shooter because we don't have a banana republic.
Yeah,
and he's a fucking banker, yet he's on the commission.
The head of the World Bank, in fact, right?
You have one. Oh no, he is the first president of the World Bank.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, he's the high.
He's running
no. He was also
of all top Rothschild shits. You know what I mean?
He was also the High Commissioner of Germany. That you remember Krupp when Krupp was convicted in Nuremberg, but then McCoy went in and pardoned him and gave all his assets back, which ended up in fucking Dean. I want to say it's not Dean Koontz. I'm horrible with names, but Dean, the one from fucking FDR's Ash. No, oh fuck, that's gonna bother me, but I won't think of it. Anyways, so all the Krupp money ended up to.
Let's go back to Grits here. What were the salient characteristics besides that? After 6 years in Vietnam, Grits served in a variety of assignments.
I think it's the bottom of the third sentence there.
Okay, was he part of Project or the Phoenix program?
I can't say for certain, but it sounds like it. But go to like the bottom of the third paragraph. I think it says Grits claims with video evidence. Yeah, that third one.
Grits received numerous awards.
Last sentence.
Anywhere
you see the Mujahideen.
Oh, I'm on the wrong paragraph. My mistake, sir. So he retires in 1979 at the rank of lieutenant colonel. Following his formal retirement, Grits claims the video evidence to have trained the Afghan Mujahideen in America on behalf of the government. Well, I'm not surprised. He seems of this ilk, right? This Project 40 ilk. As you mentioned Cody Snodgrass. That's what he describes as a small team of commandos. This basically, I think it's 40 commandos.
And let's not forget who was also instrumental in training the Mujahideen and supplying their weapons. Your greatest ally. I'll leave that as is. Your greatest ally.
On that same note, I know of a retired Army colonel who was, he must have known Grits because he was one of the guys handing over the Stinger missiles he's dead now, to the Mujahideen. Real bastard. This guy and I, we barely knew each other. We barely crossed paths, but we hated each other from the first weeks. Yeah, he
oh, you're gonna like it.
He was the head of this other project that I got associated with when I was in active duty. I got assigned to be the driver of a prototype automobile that was running on some program developed by NASA, Department of Energy, and the U.S. Air Force, running on a 200-year-old technology called the Stirling engine that gets 100 miles a gallon. But that's my interaction with this guy. Yeah. But he was a retired Army colonel. When I looked him up, I found him in Iran Contra documents. He's literally handing stingers over.
Well, you're gonna love the next connection. You're gonna love the next connection, and that comes after the next.
To that same point, real quick, that guy was running. He was also running a depot for the CIA out of an Air Force camp north of San Antonio called Camp Bullis, and at Camp Bullis, that was the largest stash of the small arms that they were dealing in all these things. I have deep concerns that the weapons trafficking and sales that were going out of Waco, that were going on in and around northern San Antonio and just north of there, ties directly into that weapons cache and depot that's probably still operating today.
Yeah. Is Camp Bullis related to Fort Hood foreshadowing?
Not directly. No, this is
I'm not. Okay. No. Okay.
no. We'll go to the next page. We're done with this one. We'll
Yeah,
go to
we're
the
done
next
with this
page.
one. So Boat Grits, obviously, with everything you said, now Boat Grits obviously was in Idaho for Ruby Ridge, obviously Ruby Bridges. I mean, oh shit, a little slip up. But yeah, we get into the next one there, where the next one talks about people that they met after the Boat Grits. So I think it's that next page, just because that's the one still talking about Boat Grits, right?
Oh, okay. Yep. So it's number 6.
Yeah, whatever. The next one.
No, that's some good shit, man.
It might be that.
Rogue Rich is a guy that doesn't get talked about. I know Clint and I have talked about him before, and I'm sure you and I have discussed him as well, but not a lot of conversations about that, man. Oh, I see you highlighted that one here, it looks like.
Yeah, the UC. Yeah, that one. About the. Oh yeah, I highlighted that one about the Mushi 18, right?
Yeah, which again, I mean, that is very, when we're talking about the small team of commandos, the CIA, the U.S. Army Special Forces, it is around these activities, these things kind of, coagulating, So it is this Operation 40L. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that is it's not these, it's operated much like we learned in Iran-Contra. These things are operated out of the National Security Council.
Yeah. But let me just ask you. Iran is its fucking neighbor Afghanistan?
Rumor has it.
Iran-Contra?
Right.
So are either of those independent?
I would say no. I would say not at all.
Yeah, which is going to bring us to our next one here. So this one talks about Fort Hood.
Right?
Yeah, this happens at, so this is at the Congress where this is the only conviction of the PATCON. And you'll see basically
so this is following
they got
the
them
St.
on
John's?
they talk about it.
Is this after the St. John's one we just discussed? Is this after the St. John's conference?
This is all the same. This is the same conference that Bo Gritz was speaking at. They made contact with these people. You see, they talk about basically sounds like plastic explosives, some firearms, but they got a conviction on 5 pairs of night vision goggles.
After blank speech, who do you think spoke? Who's our first candidate?
I think that's Bo Gritz.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Based on the whole conversation, yeah. Based on the whole conversation, again, too, like I've read through these whole things. Based on the whole flow of document, I think that's after Bo Gritz.
Yeah. Okay. So it says PATCON UCA test. It says produce the 5 night vision binocular systems. PATCON UCA tested them, found they worked extremely well, and gave blank, which blank put in his pocket. So I'm assuming PATCON UCA is. Who do you think? What we got here?
Undercover agent. Well, it'd be undercover agent, so we wouldn't really know.
Do you think so? This is an undercover FBI agent.
Yeah, so that's a direct. When they say UCA, that's gonna be an undercover agent. So that's gonna be someone who's like, even their name in there isn't gonna be their real fucking name. It's gonna be their cover agent.
Right.
But they still redacted, right?
Right. So that's what I was getting at. So where you got there before me. So when they say found they worked extremely well and gave blank, which blank. So we're seeing the UCA's agent name being blanked out then, right?
Yeah.
When asked about origin of devices, blank skirted issue and implied they came from the black market. So they're stealing them from Air Force. They're stealing them from our military bases, right?
So that second blank is going to be Thomas Posey, because he's the only conviction. You'll see that coming up. But he's an interesting character.
The one that skirted the questions?
Yeah, the one who skirted the questions is going to be Thomas Posey, because he's the one of 2 people that are convicted on this whole case. So they had fucking at least 180 days of surveillance that I know of across how many divisions that you pointed out. And they got 2 convictions on 5 pairs of night vision goggles.
Weird. And do we know where they determined they came from?
Fort Hood. I think it's in that paragraph.
So they were stolen from. Yes, they were stolen. Okay, so I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you found that. So this is another salient characteristic. I think this is important from one of the issues I call the comparison of Iran-Contra. Idaho Contra, right? Which again, we're talking the machinations of how those things cross over here today in and around Idaho with Bo Gritz and Randy Weaver and other Nazi stuff. But one thing it's been completely swept under the rug, and I'm retired Air Force military police, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I worked at headquarters in DC for almost 7 years, 5 of which I was in charge of finance, the budget, programming, future budgets, manpower, equipment, etc., for all the Air Force military police. So I understand what I'm talking about here when I say that there's been a large scale gun and ammo trafficking being run out of Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. That's not only been swept under the rug, but they've been dealing in things that are not within the Air Force inventory.
Yeah.
So we're seeing the exact same thing, right? With kind of the same deal. So they busted all the combat arms guys, the guys who run the range and all the repairs within the military police for the Air Force. That was all 7 of them in the base went down. They all got busted. But here's the thing: nothing else really came of it. It seems. And the only guy that really got held accountable, he was dealing in with an ATF agent. He was selling an ATF agent, or no, he's trying to buy. I don't remember now. That don't quote me, but there was dealings with an undercover ATF agent regarding silencers. Oh no, he was selling because I was like, where did this dude get the silencers? Because they were selling Air Force guns, they were selling some Air Force ammunition, but then they had these silencers that the Air Force doesn't have. So where was he getting these things? Is my question. Yeah. That dude disappeared in the federal prison system, if you'd believe that.
Oh yeah, don't say.
Yep.
Almost like Derek Chauvin got stabbed like 33 times, Right.
That's a good one too. There and 3 weeks after the murder there on 11/13/2022, November 13th, 2022, they moved this guy, the ringleader of that operation of selling stuff out, all the military police dudes out of the armory at Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. They moved him to Whitman County Jail in Pullman, Washington, for no good reason, and then he disappears from there.
You know what you made me think of? When they left all their weapons in Afghanistan, so they had to bring their number 1 retired agent out of retirement and trade him for a transvestite basketball player. Oh shit, we're on YouTube. Sorry. I forgot. We're on YouTube.
Good point. That's a good point. I've seen that.
They had to trade the number 1 arms dealer.
Right. What was his nickname? What do they call that guy?
Victor Bout. Victor Bout. Bout. The Lord of War.
Dude, I sat next to that basketball player when they were on Baylor University's team. I sat next on a plane back from Vegas to Dallas.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, dude, that's a dude.
Yeah.
It's Adam's apple's bigger than mine. I don't have a small
dude.
Adam's
Have you seen the topless photo? Like I got a bigger chest. He's got a bigger chest than me. That's like those topless photos. I was like,
I trust your judgment on that, Joe, and I'm going to pass on the topless photo. I'm sorry you had to see it. That sounds tragic.
Well, no. I'll put it out there. I participate with the Hotep Nation there. Hotep Jesus and all that. It's kind of funny because last week they decided they were going to start a political party called POG Party, People Against Wasteful Government, but POG, fat ass white girl. He's just saying. So pogparty.org, everyone can join. It's POG Party on Twitter, but they take a lot of black culture stuff because it's mostly black individuals. So, I saw it on that. The Hotep's been told you, and I was like, that's a fucking dude.
Oh, you ain't kidding, man. You ain't kidding. I was somewhat intimidated, to be quite honest with you. I was like, holy shit, this thing's huge. Is that a man? What is this thing?
And then they got that agent.
Damn near.
Yeah, they got that agent back from Russia, right? And then they put their retirement agent back in, their retired agent back in the field, and then the javelins show up in Mexico a week later.
Shocker, right? Shocker.
Couldn't have been the retired.
It sounds like you're describing as the same old routine, right? They let them out. They get them out, and then they're back to the old game, right?
Yeah, same old song and dance. So this is a redacted Newsweek article that the FBI made them pull. You can see it's highlighted there. They did release it like 11 or 12 years after the fact. The bottom paragraph that's highlighted, they go on about Thomas Posey and have fun with the reading. The bottom highlight there.
So this, what was this? This was published back in. It's kind of blurry. Let me see if I can bring up the other image.
It was originally wrote right after Oklahoma City, but it was published in like 2009 or some shit like that. The FBI refused to let them publish it.
That's interesting.
But yeah.
Newsweek.
Yeah. But then they did release it eventually.
I do have a clip here mentioning some other Newsweek articles, so we'll get into that here in a second. I just wanted to
no problem.
Lucy Morningstar, the Princess of Darkness, there about my humble brag of my Adam's apple. It was less about that and more about the size of Brittany Griner's Adam's apple, who, by all appearances, should not have an Adam's apple, let alone one of that size. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think it's the last.
An FBI mole speaks for the first time, huh?
Yeah.
So they had to sit on this from 95 to 2012?
Well, this article, it's actually, anyone can go to the Libertarian Institute, their Oklahoma City bombing archive. It's on there. I could probably get the link and drop it in the chat afterwards because I'm on my phone, so I can't really pull anything else up. But it's on there. So that's also where I get the Secret Service timeline. Yeah. Well, if
you give me the links to those, I'll make sure they're in the show notes too.
Yeah. But you see there where it talks about Thomas Posey? I think it's the last paragraph.
Shit, dude.
And then
no, just as you said that, I just had a fucking, blew up my brain hole. Thomas Posey was the head of Material Assistance Command? You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Keep reading.
You gotta be fucking kidding me, dude. It says one such man, Thomas Posey, the head of Civilian Material Assistance. That's the fucking Phoenix program I was just referring to. An American paramilitary group, once 1,000 strong, that in the said 1980s. This is kind of blurry, so I'm having a hard time when I zoomed in. Conducted border patrols in the Southwest to prevent illegal immigration, and with support from the White House and the CIA, trained and armed anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua. Interesting. I don't know about the border patrol. What's that about? I'm tracking on the Nicaragua stuff, but
I didn't really click in on the border patrol, but the Nicaragua, it goes in directly. I think there's a second page where they go in and directly talking about him being part of Iran-Contra, being called in front of the Iran-Contra Commission, and he's the only conviction in PATCON case.
I got to go back and revisit the Iran-Contra stuff to look for Posey now. I didn't, this is all great information.
I told you, I know this all second hand, right?
Oh man, this is fantastic. I zoomed in here on this one a little bit better. I feel like when I opened up the other image, it just got blurry for me.
Yeah.
So this one says many of the conventions shared a similar worldview. So we're talking about those same conventions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, this is an article about PATCON in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, dude. So towards the end of the Contra War, Matthews. Go ahead.
I'll get the whole link when we're done, and I'll put it in the comments. Anyone watching,
I'll pop in the show notes, folks.
Yeah. So anyone watching, give us about an hour after the show is done and on YouTube, and you'll see it there. Just go ahead and take a look if you want to read the document yourself.
Is Matthews the FBI mole? Says towards the end of the Contra War, Matthews had been one of Posey's lieutenants.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's one of the. So I'm pretty sure he's the FBI agent that they're speaking to in this article.
Yeah, I mean, when we see these deep cover FBI stuff, I mean, there's a cop out of Cincinnati. He used to live down the street from me, actually. He's famous for infiltrating the Weather Underground and testifying against them.
Yeah.
So they have some deep cover folks in these organizations, man. And I often wonder, like, when they do take some folks down, and like, is somebody dictating these undercover ops to control these organizations? It's not an effort to actually take them down, right?
Wasn't it so like the KKK? We all know it started by Democrats, whatever. But by the 1970s, I think it was like 7 out of 10 members were fucking either agents or fucking
That's
CSIs.
what I'm saying, dude.
And,
That's what I'm
and
saying.
even
Man.
and even Louis Free in that Megiddo document, it's like the KKK cannot do anything that we do not know about. He outright says it in this Project Megiddo.
Exactly, dude. Exactly. So that's a fascinating crossover here, then, with this Matthews fellow and Posey here. Well, just Posey in general.
And then if he goes yeah. And again, too, so they had 180 days of surveillance, multiple headquarters, multiple agents, multiple undercovers, and they got a conviction on 5 pairs of night vision goggles.
Right. And when you mentioned Cody Snodgrass earlier, like, I agree that, objectively speaking, some of his claims seem a bit falsifiable. Once you look at the actual circumstances of what's going on here, it just makes sense, especially when you realize the guy he used to work for was in charge of this stuff, Posey.
Well, wait. Let me go ahead and just say, I have the book. I've read it more than once. It's a fantastic book. Now he does claim a third reason for the Oklahoma City bombing, which was that all of the medical records on the Gulf War syndrome were stored in Oklahoma City. So when they were lost, trillions of dollars of payouts were never submitted. So I did my own research.
When I read that.
I did my own research, and I found an article from the Baltimore Sun, and then where it says that I think it was the VA said that they lost all those documents in a computer file transfer.
Yep. The same thing they did with Vietnam and Agent Orange, because they burned up that warehouse in St. Louis back in 1974.
Yeah. So I mean,
all the records.
That's one thing that I kind of.
When I read that, I immediately thought of that St. Louis incident. You know what I mean? So no, like you're saying, once you drill into the details, it all checks out. Especially when you realize the guy that he documented and worked for, Posey, here's the one running this operation too, right?
And he also talks about what's he talk about? He talks about a sniper that was at Ruby Ridge, Waco, and he talks about a sniper that was Ruby Ridge, Waco, and Oklahoma City. Now I cannot verify that, but you'll see later. Clinton Van Zandt, head negotiator at Waco for part of it, was also the head of Oklahoma City and came out of retirement to work on good old Uncle Ted.
So you think that's the sniper?
No. That's just another guy who I've been able to tie to all 3 of those events.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you the sniper. I know a guy that was connected to all 3 of those events, and I think he's that sniper you may be speaking of. He was later the head of the ATF.
Oh, yes. I know who you're talking about. I never even put that together. I never even thought of that at the time.
Yeah, he was
the one who had the fucking... Yeah.
He was an ATF agent at all 3 of those events, and he was a sniper at all 3 of those events.
The one that Joe Biden tried to make the head of the ATF, did he ever get... So you're saying he got approved?
He was we're talking about the same guy as a long-term temporary, temporary head of the ATF, right? He was long-term, they never formalized him. I don't want to speak of the man because I do know him personally from his Air Force career, though. He was an Air Force general.
Yeah, they said they never voted for him, right?
Yeah, and then he got kind of run out of there. I don't have any, I don't know the guy that well. I'm just saying I knew him because he was a general and I worked in and around him on projects at the headquarters from time to time. But yeah, he was a sniper at all 3 of those. So when you're talking, there are connections between all 3 of those events. I've heard stories about.
And then there's another one again too. I fucking wish my laptop didn't fry because there's another one, and it wasn't Van Zandt, but there's another guy who was directly tied to it. Another higher up who was like on his FBI retirement. It only talks about I think it only talks about the Oklahoma City part of his career, but his retirement too. I want to say Idaho. or maybe Idaho. I mean, not Idaho, Iowa. So like one of those two, Idaho or Iowa, right? But in his retirement, when he joined the local sheriff, they mentioned his Waco participation, but not the
Oh,
Oklahoma City. It's like, oh, so his
yeah.
his
So,
his FBI retirement doesn't mention the one, but then his like local profile mentions one, but not the other.
so is your take that they continue to do these things because these operations are ongoing and they don't want to, upset the mode of operations? They got, they don't want to, they're not going to, tank their own situation, so they're not going to divulge information that's going to do so, right? Because once you start realizing all of these organizations, you see all of these same people at all these events, like, what is going on here, folks?
I mean, you have like Robert Mueller sworn in as the head of the FBI on September 1st of 2001. And then like
And look
last
how
year,
DP goes. Look how DP goes
and
in
then
this situation.
and then like last year, you have the guy who was the head of the Baltimore incident who took office that week. It seems like these events that can be considered a bootleg flag. It seems like they often have a new SACs, right? Special agent in charge. Now, the other one that I found was funny was.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I think it was the New Orleans this year, right? Where everyone they had all the right wing retards that are collecting fucking all these right wing retards that are signature reduction DOD agents, right? They're like, oh, this woman's a DEI hired. This woman, she has a nose piercing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why the fuck are none of you motherfuckers saying when have you ever seen an assistant special agent in charge take a fucking press conference for an event? That's how you know they're playing an operation on that one.
Make a strong point, sir. So when we're seeing all these groups and stuff, you're saying we see Merrick Garland, Deputy Attorney General there in Oklahoma City situations. We see him orchestrating the Whitmer stuff later in the same playbook, right? We see the special agent in charge from the Whitmer situation go to DC and orchestrate some new ops there and around January 6th. We see folks connected directly to the victims of Idaho 4 at January 6th, also planning Patriot Front, Northern Idaho stuff, coordinating them.
You see. Wait, I just want to throw one in.
The same playbook, right? With these undercover folks, when these same activities, right?
Don't forget,
running the out.
The lead detective in Las Vegas was in a Maui, which was actually forecasted by what the fuck's his name, Jason Aldean, who was the singer on stage at the Harvest event. Because when he dropped that video. And it's on my Twitter. I actually cut and so when he dropped that video for "Try This in a Small Town" or whatever the fucking gay song was,
right?
There's a clip in there, right? And it's like a riot, but then the police are wearing fucking like jerseys over top of their uniforms, and there was an 8, and there was a 2 and a 3. And it's like, oh, so the event's coming on August 8th to the 23, and sure enough, Maui happened on August 8th, 23. And then, it's a harvest. You think of burning,
right?
They have the clock, the bell tower. Again, you can tie that to your recent thing with, and I apologize for the light. I'm living in a trailer, so it's not much light here.
Hey, man, no worries. I got trailer life too here, bud. No worries. I like where you're going with all these connections for sure. I mean, this is all. It's important to understand that we're looking at the same network over time. We're just describing this different elements of this large monster, right?
And can I just say one other thing about Jason Aldean? So August 8th of 23, right? August 8th of 23, they have the 8/8/23 on the police jerseys and the fucking Travis in the small town video. So August 8th of 24, he announced that he's opening his own Las Vegas fucking pavilion. A 1-year anniversary of the Harvest event of Maui. But
well, these folks love anniversaries, don't they, Jonah? They love anniversaries. And when, if I may go back to one note on Robert Mueller with how I said he's so deep in all this stuff, when he said he took over and he's got a lot of associations with the ongoing activities around these matters and, perpetrating nonsense and terror.
The Whitey Palter connection.
his first cousin once removed through his mother. His mother's first cousin was Dick Bissell, the operations chief in charge of the Bay of Pigs operation for the CIA.
I didn't know that, but he is tied to
His
Whitey
wife-
Bulger. He is tied.
Oh yeah, but his wife. I'm just going back real quick. If I just may do the JFKs, but I didn't know about the Whitey Bulger stuff, so I want to hear about that. But his wife is a Cabell. She's second cousins with Charles Cabell, the CIA director fired by Kennedy for the Bay of Pigs, and the second cousin of his brother, Earl Cabell. He was the mayor of Dallas, changing the route that day. So Robert Mueller sits in a weird epicenter of activity, if you ask me, just familially speaking, kinfolk. But Whitey Bulger, that's one I'm not familiar with.
He was
the Mueller.
If you look back far enough in it, he was not the SAC of the ASUSA. He was the what? No, he wasn't the whatever the SUSA or whatever the fuck. He was the ASUSA or whatever the fuck, the assistant in Massachusetts during a lot of during a lot of the Bulger stuff. So there are alleged ties to that directly, but. I mean, you could look it up. If you look back,
because Bill Weld was the U.S. attorney around that time. I'll have to look that up.
You mean Tuesday Weld?
Tuesday Weld's cousin, exactly. Yes, sir. Tuesday Weld's very powerful cousin in politics.
Oh, wait. You mean Hillary Clinton's running mate? No. He was actually
relative to the
Bulgers.
The Bulgers and the they go back there with the Welds. So there's an infamous incident there in the Massachusetts State House when Billy Bulger, Whitey's brother, was the president of the state Senate, and Bill Weld was the governor, and they got into a fucking cat fight, if you will. They got a little bitchy with one another on the state floor, and Bill Bulger was saying to Bill Weld, saying, "Hey, look, my family's been here for so long, we fucking run this place," and Weld just replies with, "Yeah, we sent over our help first."
Have you ever read the book Poisoner in Chief by Stephen Pink something? Poisoner in Chief, the Sidney Gottlieb story.
No.
So in that book, they allege that there's still most of the MK Ultra documents were destroyed, but during Whitey Bulger's 1950s incarceration in Kentucky, which is an interesting connection. During his incarceration in Kentucky, they alleged that he was on acid, I think, 180 days in a row as part of his inmate early release. MK Ultra.
Damn.
Yeah, I think it was like 180 days, or it might have been just a retarded high dose for a shorter number of days. Yeah. So
that's a lot of
was he MK Ultra the whole fucking time? Was he in MK Ultra acid the whole fucking time?
Yeah, it seems like it, right?
Yeah, and then again too, they mythologize all these again too. Like I even say Hannibal didn't exist. He's the mythos that fucking allows them to burn Carthage and hide their crimes, and say that Rome destroyed it, right? But I mean, again too, they always mythologize these scumbags like Frank Lucas and all these scumbags that make their plans possible. They mythologize them and sell them as fucking American heroes or just heroes in general.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that. We don't really know anything about the MK Ultra experiments. In my opinion, we know a lot of places that things occurred and parties that were involved. We don't know the slightest clue what these people did.
You have your John Travolta connection. I will say, Nicole Kidman. Yes, her father ran MK Ultra in Australia. She's hot as fuck, and she's actually tall as shit. Because I actually, when she first got married to Keith Urban, his very first concert was here in Sarnia, Ontario, in Bayfest, and I worked right outside of her trailer door.
All right.
So she's hot as shit in person. I'm like, God damn.
Fair enough.
MK Ultra for me, bitch.
Right. So this is a good book. I'll have to check this out. I'm not familiar with that. So
I can send you a PDF.
Yeah, dude.
It's on Internet Archive.
Yeah, dude. I'll put it in the link.
It's on Internet Archive for everyone.
Shit.
Yeah.
So The last thing here I saw, though, I thought was interesting was they spent time together in Vegas. What's that about?
Who?
Posey and Matthews here as part of this
Posey?
operation. They were doing some Vegas stuff. I'm not familiar with Vegas components to the Iran-Contra. I don't know if you knew something that I didn't know.
I'm not familiar with that, but the next thing we go into, which is the Sovereign Order of St. John's,
I'm
the
going to
FOIA
put
that I
in that
have
for our
there.
future conversations, because we were talking about the
Yeah.
Vegas situation earlier, right, with the special forces groups now.
Yeah.
For all we know, there's some sort of depot being run out of the Air Force operations out there.
Well, let's be honest.
Like in San Antonio, right? Like in San Antonio, right? Like in Fairchild Air Force Base.
But how does Las Vegas exist? The CIA with the mafia as part of Operation Gladio set it up as a fucking blackmail ring.
Well, I would argue that is correct, sir. But one other component you may be missing is the CIA, the Air Force, and NASA are one organization created by the National Security Act of 1947, a Nazi act that eliminated free speech in America. But those organizations have been funded through that act ever since. They get funded through the same financial.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of math nerd stuff, but outwardly they're separate organizations. Inwardly, I would argue not, and you can demonstrate that through the National Reconnaissance Office, which is composed of all three.
Yeah, well, we could also say that the Department of Homeland Security is absolutely just the Phoenix Project brought to America. But I mean,
I didn't want to get that dark, Jonah. That's pretty. I do agree with you, but
well, why do we want to pick straws? I mean, we could argue that, but I mean, we're trying to have a happy conversation. No,
right? Yeah, we just took that one off the cliff with that one because I mean, I don't disagree with you, but that is a fucking dark concept to consider, right?
Yeah, no, it's pretty.
The roving hit squads, right? The roving hit squads come home through this organization that's taxpayer funded, right?
I want to say there's actually, I actually last night I asked you if you ever read the book by a very famous communist got thrown out of the first international, Bakunin, but I do read a number of our enemies, Douglas Valentine.
I never heard of that before.
Phoenix Project. Oh, Bakunin's great. He was actually thrown out of the
folks?
So Mikhail Bakunin, he was actually pretty much like Karl Marx and all that shit at the same time. Mazzini, he was one of the top whatever as far as the communists, but his takes were so out there that they threw him out of the first international in the 1870s. Now, the reason I brought it up in our personal conversation, you showed me that Jody Sweden thing, and it just reminded me of Bakunin.
Dude, don't do it, Jonah. I'll go full process on you, bud. Let's not start talking about Full House.
No.
Church
I'm saying I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just saying that.
Dude, I'll do it. I'll go full process on you.
I mean, with Bakunin, what was it? So basically, what he did is he spoke out against, the appeal to authority of the communist mindset. And he's like, yes, I might refer to the authority of a bootmaker for his opinion on boots, but I won't refer to a single bootmaker, and I'll still have my own opinion. He was definitely. I mean, he wasn't the communist that we know. He was almost like a respectable one in his literary works. Another fantastic thing that he put in my head that I never really thought about because, I'm like you. We've been brainwashed by this Rockefeller education system that's been taken over both U.S. and Canada and pretty much the whole world, right, with Carnegie. But, he was the first one that pointed out there is no such thing as Judeo-Christian. The only thing that the Jews handed to the Christian philosophy is the name Yahweh, where if you actually analyze the religion, it's actually very much a Greek heritage or Greek, the actual process of the religion or the concept of the Christianity. So I was like, shit.
That's all very fascinating, sir. But however, I must have missed your other message you sent me earlier. Are you telling me Melissa Joan Hart, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, was at the tranny shooting in Nashville?
Fuck yeah. She was the one rescuing the kids across the field or across the highway.
I must have missed this altogether.
Hold up. Melissa Joan Hart, Nashville. Nashville shooting.
I know well.
She was the one.
I don't want to get us derailed, but I was completely shocked when I just read that message. I was like, how did I miss this earlier?
Dude, crisis actors better paying than royalties.
Right.
I mean, oh wait, what did I just say?
Well, I mean, it's hey, look, it's a paying gig, right? It's an acting job, right? It's a paying gig, right?
I mean, like that yeah, they get so abused by their producers and directors that they have such a drug addiction that they can't actually go back on film because they look like fucking drug addicts, and then they get a crisis actor gig.
Get the fuck out of here! So this was that school shooting with the transgender with the Christian school.
Fuck yes, she was the one rescuing the kids.
Get the fuck out of here, dude! How did I miss this, dude? Transpocalypse is one of the things I do track here, especially with all these, Zizzy and Death Cult style kind of Buffalo Jared-esque homicidal maniacs. And this was one of them, and she was there. What was she doing there, man? This is not right.
She was rescuing the kids across the fucking highway. Get the fuck out of here with that story.
Right, I don't buy any of that. She must have been using them Sabrina witch skills.
Yeah, like I think somehow she was able to get him across the highway, like an underpass that's like a fucking walk path or something stupid. But I mean, she was there. So, like, get the fuck out of here.
I always enjoy your details, sir, and that's a good one right there. I'm going to get into later this evening for sure.
So that's just a bunch more stuff.
Yeah, so it looks like we're doing some more traversing from Alabama, right? Decatur, Alabama, and a post office through Waco, Texas, through Arizona, and on to Vegas. The way they're describing this.
Yeah. So I mean, now since we're talking in Las Vegas, the next 4 or 5. So when you get the FOIA for like the Freedom of Information Act for the Sovereign Order of St. John's, they do all the 93 shit. And then they include 1978. So the next 5 pages we can skim through real fast. It's just an interesting aside.
If I we can definitely do that. If I may though, here real quick on this, I just saw some very important things here I want to cover. So after Posey's arrest, the FBI had Matthew's social security number changed and paid for him and his family to move to Stockton, California.
Yeah.
Yet the trial in Alabama proved frustrating for him, despite hundreds of hours of recorded conversations, like you were saying, as well as video and personal surveillance. The Justice Department only chose to prosecute Posey and his cohorts for buying and selling those stolen 5 night vision goggles.
Yep.
So that
hundreds of days of surveillance,
and that decision was made. It's out of the Birmingham office.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. It's probably made out of the Washington D.C. District of Corruption head office of the Justice.
But through the Birmingham office, because that's the home of 20th Special Forces Group.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean,
that's fascinating. That's fucking. Those are some interesting details, man.
Yeah.
So then it goes on to say here what he found was an article about Trentadue, the Salt Lake City attorney for the past 15 years. And this is important, I think.
Yes.
Not necessarily directly to today's conversation. The West Virginia-born lawyer has been shuffling across the street from his office in downtown Salt Lake City and filing profanity-laced letters and Freedom of Information Act requests to various federal agencies. This is the brother of the man the FBI allegedly, seemingly the FBI was somebody murdered this man in federal custody.
They murdered. He was in custody, listed as a suicide, and he had like 190 fucking stab wounds or some shit. It was like, again, too, numbers might be wrong. It's off the top of my head, so if I'm wrong, go ahead, research, send me, and I'll come on and say, hey, I'm a fuckhead. I was speaking on my ass, but
right,
yeah. I mean,
you're fine, John. Your details are very, very good, sir. So this is an ongoing matter with this attorney, the brother of the man they murdered. Somebody murdered while he's in federal custody because they demanded he was John Doe number 2, right? The same guy we had mentioned before was very likely Andreas Strassmeyer. So they needed a cover guy because they couldn't produce Strassmeyer. So it sounds like they found the next closest thing in Jesse Trentadue, right?
Yeah, and his body was just fucking being bruised and fucking chopped up, and then they're like, "Oh, this is a suicide," and it's like, "What?" So yeah, that's a very interesting. This screen grab I actually took from another.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, this article, the highlights are from another presentation I did a couple of years ago. But it's easy to go back on your work if you keep
So that
it.
Trinity case is ongoing, though, right? There's been some recent updates in that case, I feel like.
Not off the top of my head, but this last year since I've been out here on the farm, I mean, I don't know what happened in like about January this year. I've just been fucking like, have you ever heard of Brandon Sanderson, High Fiction? I've been reading all his shit, and a bunch of other stuff. So, but yeah,
No, I'm not familiar.
Getting to
Who is
your
this?
point, I forgot I had this document here. Brandon Sanderson, he writes high fiction, like Mistborn, and what's the other one called? I forget the name of the series. I read like they're all like 1,500-page books. So it's a very high fiction. They call it.
You're
He's
dedicated.
actually the one when
That's a long
Wheel of
book. You're
Time,
dedicated man.
the book series, like the Wheel of Time series. So Robert Jordan was the first author, but Brandon Sanderson was the one who finished that series when Robert Jordan died. So he's well known, but he's also a Mormon, which is very interesting. And we could actually that's can be another topic. But
Did you say Mormon?
yeah. Yeah.
That's you would not believe the
High
number of
fantasy.
political conspiracies that the Mormons connect to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would, because I'm in. Well, I'm just outside of London,
I mean,
Ontario, and you talk about the
mean that.
Mormons in Mexico.
Oh, I mean that more of in kind of just more of a
Yeah.
being a jackass about it, because it's literally almost every
Yeah.
fucking thing.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of being a jackass too, because
Yeah, because
you have the Mormon mafia, but you also have the Mexican mafia, right? Not the Mexican mafia, the Mennonite mafia. So, give me a second here. Someone's at my door.
sure,
I think.
sure, go ahead, sir. So,
Okay, good.
well, Jonas, you gotta take a break. Go ahead. Yeah, no more.
Yeah. No. It's one of the guys that lives on property with Madison asked me something.
Oh, so if you need to take a break, I can play a clip here. No worries.
Yeah, go ahead, play a clip. I know you got a couple of them.
So when we're talking, I just wanted to show this is one of my favorites. I used to teach this in courses I taught in small arms training in the Air Force. To teach my troops and stuff like that. I used to use this clip as evidence that just because you have a gun, just because you're standing near your target, doesn't mean you can hit it. You know what I mean? So this is the famous incident in February of 1996 where, again, I remember this shit when it happened. I was living just south of there, and this is Wilmington, Ohio. I was like 45 miles south, just due south of Wilmington at the time. So the Kehoe brothers, who were on this nationwide campaign, seemingly of this, this 10-year anniversary, right? This 10-year anniversary of the Allen Berg murder of this. They call, and I have some clips describing these anniversaries and activities as cited by folks who wrote about books about Furman. The guy who's the Nazi felon guy who's providing commentary on why Brian Koberger is guilty in the Idaho 4 murders, strangely enough. The guy who's from down the street from 3 of the victims. The guy who's down the street from the order, who he's connected to through all this white national stuff. So all of these, that's all stuff's very fascinating to me, how these reoccurring things keep happening. But these Kehoe brothers are connected to all of this, and they're part of these domestic campaigns. So they robbed a number of banks, gun shops, and famously got into this shootout with the Ohio State Police in February of 97, where they shot, I believe it was 13 rounds within 6 meters or 7 meters of each other here, at the furthest distance of when the rounds were shot. So it's closer to that, and that's the furthest. You can't hit the broadside of a barn at 7 meters. That's kind of what we see here, but it's, we got the adrenaline pumping, and, it doesn't, these things, they weigh into whether or not you're hitting your target. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'll give a quick little synopsis, because it kind of fits in. I have 18 years as a bouncer. I've kind of indicated that I might have been into some dirty shit in my lifetime. I've always said that if I'm more than 10 yards away from you, I've always said if I'm more than 10 yards away from you, I sure as fuck hope I'm your intended victim and not a bystander.
Right. With the first shootout, I believe was 13 shots between the 2 officers and the one brother that's shooting.
Yeah.
And then immediately following this shootout, about 2 hours later, they get caught up with one of the brothers. He gets an AR-15 out of his car. Apparently, they had that in there too, because they just robbed this gun dealer in Arkansas, apparently, and murdered him and his family.
Yeah.
That's a different story altogether. But he fires over 30 rounds towards 2 Wilmington town PD officers, and they return at least. The rumor has it they only loaded
I'm just going off the top of my head though, right? Too, all that Kehoe shit happened right before they're able to pass that Joe Biden terrorism law that was the first suspension of habeas corpus, right?
That's kind of, we're talking about the same business, right? You got to have, you got to have something to make these laws, right? And these white nationalists, and someone had pointed to the process earlier in the chat, and this, they operate within this sphere of operations because they're Nazis themselves.
Let me ask you a question though, right? When it comes to murder, do they need the body or do they need the egregore? Right?
They need the terror.
Yeah, and I mean, do they need the body? Do they need the egregore? Right? So if they tell you on the news that Nicole Simpson, I'm not saying she is or isn't, right? But if they tell you on the news that she's butchered up and she 100%. Is, and she's just retired too. Or, if Special Agent McVeigh is allegedly death penalty, but reassigned to another field office, does it really matter whether his death occurred or everyone believes it did?
I don't know if you cut out or me. Am I back?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, yeah, okay, I'm back. I'm out in the country, so sometimes it does get wonky.
Is that me?
I'm good now. Can you hear me?
It's definitely me.
Okay.
I'm trying to get my Starlink to reset here, and it's being dumb. No, okay. Dude, I like where you're at, dude. These are the details I enjoyed there, sir. So you were saying that the same thing, the egregore, the idea, the terror, the campaign, the idea that this thing's occurred. She could very well be alive. There's a theory that Nicole Brown Simpson's back in Kelly, and I'm not exactly opposed to it.
Well, I mean, I remember a few years ago, I did a great show with General Lee. We recorded on New Year's Eve, the night that they said Pope Benedict had died.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this all ties into Janus, the Roman two-faced God, whose number is 11, who is the God of beginnings and end. And then if you do all the numbers of I tied 11 to that event 100 different times, and then they had his they had to view it from the 2nd to the 5th or whatever. So the 2nd is 2, then the 3 was gives you 5, and then they buried him on the 6th under the obelisk, which is also said to be Janus's cock or Osiris' cock, depending on which version of history you take. But again, whether Pope Benedict died on December 31st or he died on fucking January fucking 21st, but they only told you on December 31st to get the egregore, does it really fucking matter?
That's the point, sir. That is the magic trick, right?
Yeah. So you had that clip there?
Yes, sir. So the Kehoe brothers engaged in this gun battle here on a shootout in a small town in Ohio. That's a fucking understatement. So again, this is not long after that bank robbery I was describing. It's within proximity of at least no more than 20 months. That's what a cruiser camera recorded, what shocked viewers around the world and saw and heard in the days and months following February 15th, 1997. There we go. All right. So February 15th, 1997, the Kehoe brothers did this.
Back here, boy. Back here, boy. I don't want no shit. I don't want no shit. Fuck him. Gun. Don't shoot. I got nothing. Freeze.
They don't have the next shootout on camera, sadly, because that one was even bigger. That was about 45 plus rounds. That was about 13 rounds. And strangely enough, you don't really see it unless you slow it down. But the tactics of the brother the one firing there, I believe it's Chevy Kehoe. I'll double check that in a second. But the tactics he's got, dude, he immediately pulls a pistol out of his waistband while his brother's being wrestled in the driver's seat and pops that first round right past the trooper's head. I mean, he barely misses. What I'm saying is this man knows how to operate that firearm, despite him missing, because, again, the adrenaline's rushing. He's running backwards and turning at the same time. He's a very – because you think, well, that dude's not trained in that weapon. I assure you that man is highly trained in that weapon.
Fun fact. Myself, I was born on February 15, 1978. It was either 5 minutes or 55 minutes after
your birthday.
No, but listen, February 15, 1978. Yeah, 5 minutes or 55 minutes after so I'm within 5 or 55. I forget the numbers. Ted Bundy's very last arrest in Florida was pretty much the exact same time I was born.
The February 15th.
Pretty much like it's either 5 minutes or February 15, 1978 is when they picked him up and they had no idea who he was. Just pointing that out.
Right. They found him in the Volkswagen.
Unrelated to anything.
They're like, this guy's creepy, right?
Yeah. That one. That was February 15, 1978. It's like 4 a.m. or something like that. Well, my birth was like within 5 minutes or 55 of it.
You may not be thinking there's a Ted Bundy connection to tonight's conversation, but I would say you are wrong, sir. So, friend of the Kehoe brothers, back in the Idaho and Washington days, that is, where they hail from, because they're later arrested in Washington and Utah, the Kehoe brothers are. Their friend growing up out there was none other than serial killer Israel Keyes, who murdered a family, an elderly couple, retired couple, in Essex, Vermont, which is about 15 miles from where I was at there, my hometown there in Vermont, my bootleg hometown of Huntington, Vermont, Ringles Hump. That had occurred in June of 2011. And I wasn't there specifically when it occurred because I was, I think I got there the next week on vacation. Within days of the event, I believe I got there on vacation, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong with the year there, but nonetheless, Ted Bundy was born, Essex is 5 miles outside of Burlington, and Ted Bundy was born in Burlington, Vermont.
No doubt. So
and weird as that, man.
I mean,
a lot of serial killer activity around that area. You know,
normally
thinks about that place to be a serial killer stuff, right?
Yeah. Let's be honest too. Wasn't some of it because he's from the West Coast through Colorado, but wasn't some of his victims in Idaho too? I could be wrong.
He had some victims there in around these regions there in Washington, but he was also in the upper echelon of Republican politics in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
And then the assistant to the Attorney General or the driver to the Attorney General, if I'm not mistaken.
And we're talking about these people that are transferred custody and then just disappear, like got himself out a second floor window of Colorado courthouse.
Yeah, dude, Ted Bundy's flying under the name Ted Bundy. He wasn't worried about anything.
I mean,
when you're
it's almost
going to
as
the
obvious as John Wayne Gacy.
Ted Bundy. Then he's not concerned that there's not a wire search for him, right? There's not a be on the lookout for Ted Bundy,
It's almost like John Wayne Gacy hanging out with Rose Carter.
Yeah, I mean, how I could go on a long day about that, sir. So let's go back to
let's get back on track.
We got the Kehoe brother situation. Let's go through the rest of these slides we got here for us. So we were on.
So the next 5 or so are just real quick. These are all the ones from 78. And now basically it's the Sovereign Order of St. John's. They talk about no, this one is actually the one where they talk about not prosecuting Tom Posey and put it on hold. So that kind of goes in line with what you were just saying in the past. So that's just interesting little. It's straight from the director of the FBI, if I'm not mistaken, up at the top.
Birmingham will place these cases in a RUC status. That must mean they'll place it in a go fuck yourself status.
Yeah, I don't know what RUC is, but it kind of seems like until conclusion, right? Or until conclusion or something like that, right? So
I think it means no one's ever going to fucking look at this.
No, because they're talking about the Thomas Posey stuff, right? So they do eventually bring him out of the RUC. Here's just another article about Thomas Posey where they say he's directly tied down to cancer for global paper.
But in that file is going to be something saying we're going to ignore all these other things and we're only prosecuting this one thing.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. That must be the go fuck yourself RUC status.
Yeah.
Like a diversionary
so
plan,
then,
if you will. You know what I mean? They'll outline a diversionary plan. The Epstein kind of deal, right?
Yeah. So the next one, like the next 5 are from 1978. They just tie in to everything we're talking about because it's Sovereign Order of St. John's, it's wire fraud, using like 35 million in bonds, they're AAA bonds from Canada through Landmark Casino in Las Vegas to get $1 billion loan. It's
Let's
just, I mean, it's just a real quick one.
Which one was that? Landmark Casino?
The next 5, the next 5 pages here. I didn't really highlight. Oh, I just went through this. This is just something that's included in the FOIA for the Sovereign Order at St. John. So it's really interesting that they're talking about all this. You know, the in 1990s they're doing bank robbery, and then in 78 they're doing bank robbery for billions of dollars.
You know what I mean? Yep, that's what we do.
Yeah,
That's what we do. We rob banks.
Yeah, so you just click through there, and they'll go through.
It's like the old, the infamous saying that's attributed to, I think, one of them early gangsters, numerous. And who knows if anyone actually ever said it? But you know, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is, right?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, though, too, is like the reason I did highlight those because it kind of talks about the value that they were they were frauding banks out of. And the bank, I mean, the FBI does say that they put like 15 million in assets to be transferred to work the case or something. It's just so wild. It's a wild document to look over. But having said that, again, the only thing I highlight on those next 5 pages is the fact that they actually say in there the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem is the Knights of Malta, which they never mentioned in the 93 investigation.
Well, that's interesting because we got a lot of Knights of Malta stuff in the Obama administration.
Yeah, so that is the name, or the Knights Hospitaller, or Hospitaller, however you say it. That is the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem.
Yeah, like Pete Buttigieg, his uncle is a member of the Knights of Malta, for example. Just you know, they're dancing him back and around for the next candidacy. Well, his uncle is his uncle Buttigieg is a Knight of Malta.
Well, it wasn't Donald the Grump, his Asper or whatever, William Ramsey had a picture that kind of looked like he's the Knights of Malta. So
yeah, he's got some Knight of Malta stuff going on there too. I did a show with William Ramsey about that. Actually, we had him on the Occult Rejects, and I think it is concerning the volume of activity at Knight of Malta amongst any of these administrations.
Wasn't Clarence Thomas tied to it somehow, allegedly? I could be wrong on that one, but again, too, sometimes you know, some of these,
that would be fascinating. That I don't discount it. That's for sure.
He's definitely a Roman Catholic.
Yeah, I would picture John Roberts as more of a candidate for that situation, but maybe both. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, he is a Roman Catholic, so
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
So we're looking at, we did that one. We did the St. John.
Yeah, Landmark.
Did we do this one? What's this one?
Yeah. Oh, that's all. Like the next 5 sheets are all just the same. It's just background information.
Is this another
we can skip through them real quick. That's from the 78th one, so I wouldn't be too good on the names. But you'll see there, it's Los Angeles again. It's Miami.
This is not boding well for your guess of Oklahoma City, officer. This is not boding well. This is a FBI memo.
No, this is completely
New Jersey.
Yeah, this is from 78, so this is like 20 years earlier.
Yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying. If I don't know what we're getting into here, but what I'm saying, if this has any connections to what we're describing in the 90s, I'm going to go back to Operation Fountain Pen in the Indianapolis field office.
Yeah, I'm not saying it could be on definitely. Especially
I'm just messing with you. I just want to play Mad Libs with these things.
You'll see like they talk about Miami office and Las Vegas and San Antonio comes up again, so they probably have a headquarters in San Antonio.
So this is after Howard Hughes died, and they're buying Howard Hughes Casino in Las Vegas, the Landmark Casino. Okay.
Yeah, then which obviously brings into what the fuck, Onassis?
No, Well,
You know, actually,
not only Onassis, but the Mormons. Who do you think's selling off his assets, right?
yeah.
The Mormon
Well,
mafia, that
Onassis
gay
will
fella.
maybe.
I'm not talking about his sexuality. His name was gay.
Yeah, no, Onassis is the one who kidnapped him. It's a Scorpio, right?
Yeah, but how do you
Allegedly.
do that without the express approval of the guy who's running the company? He's got to be in league with that. So this I believe his name's Frank Gay. He's this deeply connected Mormon
Yeah.
fellow. He's behind the whole business. He's running the what's known as the Mormon Mafia. I've done
Wait.
I've done like 4
I
episodes with
wonder.
Howdy Love on the Occult Rejects on these subjects relative to this Mormon Mafia, Howard Hughes, and these things. And I did not realize in everything we've covered so far that this deal went down. So
I wonder if that. I wonder if that dean from Harvard, whose name was Gay, if she's related to them, because you know, if you go back far enough to the 1920s, there was a head of Harvard. Yeah, I think I'm not. I came across his name researching Felix Frankfurter. He wasn't, but he was a dean at Harvard in the 1920s who was also named Gay. So I just say she's a bloodline, and her father allegedly like a Haitian immigrant. And it's all just a fuck cover story.
You ain't kidding, dude. So her family allegedly owns the largest concrete plant in Port-au-Prince, not Little Port-au-Prince here where I live in Ohio, but Port-au-Prince.
Yeah, Port-au-Prince in Haiti.
And Gay attended the Phillips Exeter Academy, the most prestigious private school in New Hampshire. So you make some strong arguments. You have some good details there, sir. So I'll have to look into that and somehow look at these gay intersections. Again, not the sexuality, the family, but so if we're looking at this document again, what do you think's going on with these Miami activities here in 76? Looks like.
So if you look at the main characters, Dene was one of them. So the 2 main suspects were located in Surfside, Florida. So that's why Miami was the head office.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they just it covers all kinds of wire frauds and bank frauds where they use
let's be honest,
false securities and got a bunch of money. Cocaine,
BCCI.
You know,
the early onset of
BCCI
hasn't formed yet, I don't believe, because they don't do BCCI until the Nugan Bank gets rolled up, and we'll use that as a segue back into Idaho here. But was there any more of these documents we want to look at? Yeah, no, if you just flip through a couple more, so these are just quick. I didn't really want to cover them, but it's just showing the ties from the 70s. So it's not really tied with PATCON, but it's, Sovereign Order of St. John's and bank robberies. It's relevant, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of tied, but it's not really. So, I mean, that could all be under the same operations, maybe, it might be groups like Sovereign Order of St. John's that are running these skinhead organizations because,
I was going to say, dude.
A lot of them like that Cross of St. George, if I think back to my skinhead days, with this band Brutal Attack, it's like, I am St. George and I come to reclaim my empire. So that's one of the songs that I'll still listen to it from time to time, but it's like,
you know what I mean? They have sovereign status, right? So no one can ever touch them. So why wouldn't they run some hood rat shit?
Yeah. And then even your co-host Nick, when he was doing the shows with Lux, and they were talking, they were doing when they did for the start of the Russia-Ukraine fake conflict, right? The beta testing of all the AI fucking surveillance, right? I mean, we can call it a war, but I call it beta testing of AI surveillance of the whole population. But let's go ahead and so they start covering the symbolism, they call symbolism.
What you're describing sounds like you're describing the machinations of what it is. It sounds like what you're describing is far more accurate depiction of what's occurring there.
Yeah. I mean, it's like beta testing of drones that occurred in Vietnam, but no one talks about that. But I'm just saying.
For sure,
I mean, you might have to read a fucking book. Or beta testing of Homeland Security under a Phoenix Project. But again, too, I'm just speculating.
Folks don't know how to read, Jonah. Folks don't know how to read.
And even better, they give us the documents. You could call it revelations of the method, or you call it fucking psychopathy, right? So they just kind of want to fucking brag about this shit.
Are they buying BCCI here in this operation?
They might be, or they might be getting funded by it. I forget how it goes directly.
Because you're implying that these Malta Knights are running shit and they're the Sovereign Order of St. John folks. Well, the Vatican Bank was part owners of BCCI with the CIA.
Yeah, well, Operation Gladio. Let's not forget about the Madrid banker or Milan banker who hung himself at Friars Bridge, right? Blackfriar or whatever the fuck it is.
And let's not forget Cardinal Paul Mar whatever Fraggle Rock Marchenko.
Wait. If I'm not mistaken, they just had a massive money laundering case in the Vatican where the Pope kept coming in and be like, no, you can't call that witness. No, you can't do this. You can't do that. Oh, and then he ends up dead.
That's correct, sir. And
I mean,
you know who's deeply connected to all this. And then, speaking of subjects, no one talks about a fellow by the name of Charles Bluehorn. You can see the Charles Bluehorn story connected to the Vatican Bank scandal in the film Godfather 3 as Michael Corleone's character. That's really Charles Bluehorn.
I don't care about that.
That's Cocaine Bob's boss.
I know that, but I just want to talk about The Offer.
Oh well, we're obviously gonna have to. We're gonna have to unpack that. There's so much to unpack in that storyline, man. It goes.
Dude, I watched that. I'm like, I put that on one time. Like I was fucking sick, and I put that on because I saw it was about like the making. And within so normally when I put on any because I don't watch that's probably one television series other than I've watched Reacher because I've read all those books, you know.
I only watched it because of my obsession with Cocaine Bob. That's the only reason. I'd never seen Godfather.
I put it on, and when my TV's on, I'm never actually looking at it, or like I just have it on in the background, and I only put it on like once every fucking 7 months, you know. But I put that show on. Within the second episode, there are so many fucking eggshells that are Easter eggs in there. I'm like, what the fuck? And I literally turned and like. I watched that fucking thing. I actually went back to the start and watched the episodes that I was just playing in the background. Like, what the fuck? The Chinatown.
You ain't kidding, dude. You ain't fucking kidding.
Let's do a show on that.
No, we're gonna have to. In fact, I got Phil Z coming on Fridays this week. Phil Cesaro, and I'll invite him as well to join us because he's a wealth of information on all things mafia and Bob Cocaine Evans as well. So. That'll be Now we'll definitely have to do that because it seems right here we're looking at kind of what we're describing here is it says right here Newark advises that blank of Index International had contacted their office to report that his firm had been contacted by Denny. I'm not sure who that is, who was attempting to secure a loan. Suspect. Okay, he was attempting to secure a loan to purchase a bank in the Bahamas, dude. If this is not the early onset with the time frame to the purchase of BCCI, I would be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many other ones. I mean, we could go like how many banks have they owned? Like the Isaiah brothers is just one that I like to bring up. I mean,
but
the Chicago.
If I'm not mistaken, that was the first Meyer Lansky had his banking operations, I believe, down there. But that was the first spook operations. Even though they already were doing, what I'm saying is that was the time in which they had then separated their financial dealings with the mafia and did their own.
Yeah. So that's definitely
that's
so
fucking
next
wild,
thing
dude. I'm going to look more into that because I'm telling you, dude, fountain pen.
I'll send you the link.
It's one shit.
Actually, you know what? I'm not sure I have that link, but what I'll do is, so you still have that to my drive. I'll just drop the 230-page FOIA in there for you later.
Yeah, and I can put the link if this is in your drive, I can put the links to them in the show notes too for folks to see all these documents.
Yeah, we can do that.
I don't know how
there's nothing else on that drive.
Just have them on file, or we can figure something out for folks to check these out.
Yeah, that drive is pretty much empty anyway. So yeah.
This is some interesting shit. So like people want to like fucking diminish what going on in the FBI vault and looking at stuff, dude. I like to look at stuff on there. For example, when OJ Simpson died, I looked at all 471 pages, I believe it was, and I learned a lot of shit, dude.
Dude. When I left the USA, they took down the entire crew that FBI on hate crimes. And then I called my father, like, oh, I need a plane ticket back to Canada 3 days because they just have my name around, right? So they have my name since the 90s. I just go on and fucking don't even use a VPN. Fuck it.
Sure. Right. So
you know,
this is a cable from 78.
Yeah, and you see there they actually say it is the Knights of Malta's sovereign order. Yeah. Yeah, she's like 78-year-old woman. Yep.
Yeah, I was about to say what she did.
The next thing we go into, next thing we get into, I think, is the Secret Service timeline from Oklahoma City, but I could be wrong. Let's just see what the next slide is.
Oh shit, dude! It amazes me how much stuff folks have put together in the past where we still exist today as a society and culture where this shit's just, again, it's still plaguing us. Again, that's why I keep calling it Idaho Contra, because it's the same fucking thing with the same fucking people.
Let's just go into the beta testing of the full spectrum dominance that they're doing of the illegal immigrants and all these fucking retards that are fucking swallowing Donald Trump's cum like by the gallon. We're like, oh, he's saving us from the immigrants, not realizing that the Phoenix Project, Homeland Security Patriot Act was turned back on your dumbasses fucking 20 years ago, and you're just literally fucking swallowing Trump's cum, waiting for Patriot Act 5.0. They're skipping 2, 3, and 4, and just putting you right into 5. But I mean, let's be honest, like.
I try to remain optimistic. It's getting weird these days, right?
Not one NGO is going to lose their fucking grants because it's for them to take the fucking tax exempt status from fucking George Soros, who is actually completely funded by the U.S. government, tax free, would mean that they would have to give up all the tax free dollars that they're giving to their fucking.
You can't do that to the husband of Hillary Clinton's side piece. And daughter of the Muslim Brotherhood. You can't do that to her.
They'll never do that.
Huma Abedin, right?
They'll never do that.
She's the queen of the Soros enterprise, right?
But they'll never do that because then fucking what is the Zionist?
They'll never do that because these fucking Nazis will never do it.
No, they'll never do that because Donald Trump isn't going to take money from Adelson. So hey, Soros, keep your money because Adelson wants his.
That's what I said. The Nazis will never do it. Just because they're Jewish doesn't mean they're not a Nazi. There was Jewish Nazis. I'm sorry.
I mean, well, let's just break down the word Nazi. Does that sound like National Socialist or National Zionist? And exactly. When I was tripping balls on Clint's show, I brought up. Have you ever heard of the Sanhedrin?
It sounds familiar, but you have to refresh your memory.
So that's the rabbinical group that are responsible for the Talmud. Well, if you go ahead and look up the Sanhedrin and you look up their president, it is Nasi, Nazi.
Oh, well, that's convenient.
So, like, back in Babylon, when they were doing right into the Babylonian Talmud, it was the Nazi who was the president.
Typical.
Just saying. I mean,
times change, language change, and it's always the same shit, just like it is from Idaho Contra. I'm sorry, to Iran Contra to Idaho Contra. So we're looking at the Oklahoma City line, right? What are we talking about here?
You mean MAGA in Persian, Iran? MAGA in Persian means magic. Oh. You dumbasses that have magic ran all over your fucking asses right now.
Not
necessarily our listeners, but. Yeah, not necessarily our listeners, but I mean,
Well, I mean, we're all victim and subject to it to some degree, but and we all.
So this document here
for the magic show. So this is part of the magic show here relative to OKC, right? What are we looking at? Who did this?
So when we're talking about the, do that real quick. But when we're talking about the magic show, I say, hey, listen, when that's like 1990s, like I said, CNN put put their record label Resistance Records in their P.O. box in Detroit on the fucking screen, which made me able to get in contact with the Nazis so I could get their music and be brutal. So they ran some predictive program on me as a dumb teenager. But I mean, I'm not going to hold someone else for being it, but I'm not going to necessarily include you in my life all the time, you know?
Yeah. So, I don't have any favor for these people, but I'm not going to fault them for falling for the magic show necessarily. But I apologize. I'm cutting out like crazy here. But can you let us know what the timeline is here? Who produced this?
So that's the USS timeline. So that's the United States Secret Service. That's the timeline that was admitted in the Oklahoma City bombing trial. And
they're a trustworthy bunch, right?
No, but if you get to the next page, I highlighted one thing that's said in there. So
I was being extremely sarcastic, and let me show you why. So, with the guy that made up a lot of the evidence in the Idaho 4 murders, a detective Meowry, as I call him. His name's Mowry, but I call him Meowry. He got awarded for all of his great forensic investigatory skills and services in that case by the U.S. Secret Service for Lord knows what reason why they would be awarding such an award to this jackass, but that is life here, sir. That's what has occurred. I was being sarcastic when I say they're a trustworthy bunch. You know what I mean? Like they're always up to something there. That's Secret Service.
Yeah, but the one thing that's really interesting, if you go through that whole document, so this is the official documents from the documents that were submitted in the Oklahoma City, and that's again on the Libertarian Archive for the Oklahoma City bombing. But it's really interesting. Is the next page? It talks about the satellite surveillance over Elam City.
So what's the big takeaway here, though? Is this timeline different than the main timeline? Just as the quick overview.
No, this is like just the one that's submitted as part of the evidence. So it's kind of funny because they in that timeline they talk about the FBI confirming to the president that there was a second device. There was a third device.
There was more than there may have been more. Yeah, so there may have been multiple, right?
Yeah. So they have all that. If I'm not mistaken, it talks about like the New York FBI chasing around Muslims at the same time during that day. But
I was going to say that. So this occurs in April of '95. If you look at these things chronologically, as far as these long-term planned domestic terror campaigns, which we'll get into here in a moment, here as described by authors of folks who investigated Mark Furman and the OJ Simpson stuff back in the 90s and wrote these books. They described these campaigns that were information provided to them by sources with inside law enforcement. So again, people know about this shit. They've known about it for a long time. We just don't, publicly we don't know about the shit, even though we should, because the shit's out there, right? I mean, it's publicly available to be known.
If we're talking about 95, there's this famous rap musician who has a video where he's sitting on a tranny who like takes a piss in the urinal right next to two dudes, and then one of his lines like "blow up like the World Trade."
Is that
he died long before 2001. He died way before 2001, so why is he talking about blow up like the World Trade? Oh yeah, the shake, the blind shake.
Well,
93.
I mean, to be fair, he ties in all these terror events, right, from the 93 bombing, right? So I'm glad you brought that up there, because again, if the sources are correct from this law enforcement sources, again, as described by two independent authors in the 90s writing about Mark Furman and the OJ Simpson case, if their information was correct from two different sources, as they learned later, these things were not from the same law enforcement source. One was the LA County Prosecutor's Office, another one was an unidentified, I believe, FBI source. But they determined that the murder of this was the plan hatched out in Hayden Lake, up there by immediately where three of the victims in the Idaho 4 murder are from, where the order is, right? This is the same thing. So the same compound they planned out the stuff in 84 with the bank robberies, the killing of Allen Berg, etc. They did the same thing in 94, and allegedly the first event in that domestic terror campaign was the murder of a white woman to blame a notable black man. And they picked them for it served multiple purposes, but that was one of the purposes.
Well, again, I'm going off the top of my head, so I might be wrong with some of the information. So this is like just first-hand information from the 90s. So there was two at Idaho. At the Hayden Lake, the Aryan Nations compound. There was Richard Butler, right, and then William Pierce was the founder, Aryan Nations Congress in Virginia. Now,
William Pierce, founder, right?
I think William Pierce might have been, because he's the Congress up in Virginia. That could be Butler is the founder of that compound, if I'm not mistaken.
You're right.
But Pierce is the founder of the organization, and Pierce wrote the Turner Diaries. Well, one of those two is definitely a federal informant.
What's that?
One of those two is definitely a federal informant, if not an agent.
What's that? You mean two of two, right?
Two. Okay. Now, it's kind of funny too, because when you were talking about all this shit 2 weeks ago with Julie or Cosmic Pizza or whatever it was, And you brought up the Turner Diaries, and I said in there, like, that book is surprisingly decent. So I would say it is actually a, it is published by our enemies to be that lightning bolt. Well, let's not forget, though, too, remember, if you've ever watched A Noble Lie, that they talk about they talk about how, like, the Turner Diaries kind of forecast, like, the bombing of a federal building.
Yeah.
But the Oklahoma senator brother was writing a book about Oklahoma City being bombed like 2 years prior to it.
Are you talking about the governor, sir? And he wrote a book bombing the same building, and the bomber's name was Tom McVeigh?
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, it's talking off the top of my head. So maybe I was wrong on the information, but yeah, same story.
Yeah, no. And he's doing it a year before these events. Published.
But while we're talking about this event, I am going to say R.I.P. to Terrence. And I always get the name wrong. I just say Yankee, but I think it's like Yankee. So he's the first officer, the black officer that.
Terrence Yankee.
I was going to say R.I.P. Yeah. Yiki or whatever his name is. I'll say RIP to him because he was a real one and they fucking took him out just like trying to do.
Yeah. Well, there was a bit of a cleanup operation following this, right? Not only in Oklahoma, but kind of across the U.S., in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, then even if you compared, like, just again, too, I haven't gone into but just a surface level comparison, like the murders are pretty fucking similar with all the stab wounds, etc. I mean, one was in a prison, and one was in solitary confinement. Yankee and tried to do.
Yeah.
Well, now, I mean, there was a little bit difference. One was in a prison cell, and the other like hopped up fence and walked like 2.5 miles from his car to stab himself a bunch.
Again, once we get into these clips that I have from these authors from the 90s who wrote and investigated these things and were spot on target, in my opinion, what you're saying is pretty on target to what they were saying.
Yep. Yeah, let's get into a couple of those clips, and then I got two more things.
Yeah, well, we got 2
slides, and then
yeah. Then the clips only take about we'll analyze them here within about a 20 or 30 minute time frame. If that works for you.
Yeah.
Let's finish up these last few slides.
Okay. So I was saying that there was. So the next one, the reason I was bringing up the satellite surveillance, which is highlighted on the second page of the Secret Service timeline.
Is this the proper one? Is this what we're looking at?
I might have put the wrong one in there. What's that say? Is there highlighted? So there's a red box near the bottom of the page.
Yep.
Satellite
assets have been tasked to provide intelligence concerning the compound. Okay. And this is Elohim City.
So they're talking about Elohim City, but
so this is. But I'm just trying to provide context for folks of the interwebs who aren't familiar with Elohim City. This is a place that had Ryder U-Haul trucks, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or was it the nearby Army compound? Where were the Riders at around? They had some similar trucks that were used in the bombing, right? Right around there, right?
Weren't they Penske?
I'm sorry, Penske. Whatever the same truck was used in the bombing, they had the same trucks. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's also where Andreas Strassmeyer was until the FBI wanted to question him, and he smuggled himself back out through Mexico and ended up in Germany and did a phone conversation with the FBI as though he wanted. So he's like the only one who did a phone conversation from Germany as part of their investigation.
I got a clip on precisely what you just described, but in regards to those trucks, I believe they were parked at a nearby Army National Guard base near Elohim City.
Definitely sounds about right, but the reason I was focusing on that, so we're talking about the order in their armed robbery. So let's go ahead and click to the next slide. The Aryan Republican Army, which, by the way, just has a guy named Kevin McCarthy in it.
Well, that's odd. But one thing on the Elohim City and these trucks, the National Guard, again, 20th Special Forces Group.
Right Guard. There?
No, I'm saying they
Oklahoma City's right next to Alabama, right?
But I'm saying they operate from administrative controls out of Fort Bragg through an operational controls in Birmingham, Alabama. But they operate under the National Guard, so they're not prohibited by posse comitatus as they like to claim, right? As they like to claim.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that we would find. So if they want to operate some special forces business in and around Elohim City, they would probably use an Army National Guard base.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm just.
I was thinking. Again, I'm Canadian, so my geography isn't the best, but Alabama is kind of right next to Oklahoma, right?
No, they're not. They're not far away. I'm just thinking, logistically speaking, if you needed to operate in a facility near Elohim City, they would use an Army National Guard base. That's but they're not far away. You're correct there too.
Yeah.
So let me pull up the next one. Well, so where do you think? Well, where are your thoughts on these satellites there, Jonah?
So as far as my understanding, the satellite surveillance worked for the Aryan Republican Army, who you'll see they had quite a little adventure that kind of goes along with the order. Now, it's kind of funny because if you look into the convictions, Scott Stediford, who was the lead singer of Day of the Sword, I still listen to a couple of their songs from time to time, but I don't necessarily agree with their music, but it's shit I grew up on. Bloodstained Emerald is a great song about Ireland and the infighting over there, but I'm just saying, like,
I love
years,
their
everyone
single.
else got.
I love their single "Aborted Fetus of a Butt Fuck," but please continue.
But if you listen to, if you look into the conviction, so that as far as the my understanding, that's who the aerial surveillance was for their bank robbing. Again, I think there was.
Oh, are you fucking kidding me,
some
dude?
federal agents.
Wait, are you fucking kidding me here, Jonah? You're telling me they were using intelligence satellite surveillance to help the Aryan Republican Army here to rob banks to finance. What are we financing here? Coke and hookers?
Well, I mean, not just financing, but just think of the suspension of the civil rights that you would have.
So you're saying this is a campaign in which to eradicate rights in America, huh? Is what you're conveying here?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of funny if you look into all the convictions. Like Scott Stediford got like 31 years, everyone else got 6 or less. So it seems like there might have been some federal. There might have been a 6
bank
to
robbery
1.
I was telling you about with the AR-15s in Cincinnati, Ohio, and the suburbs. Dude, that happened within this time frame described right here.
Yeah, it might be a 6 to 1 CSI versus suspect.
Well, this would This would provide context why the FBI never investigated this most heinous. This is literally, if you look at all of the bank robberies in America, they are like, no, we're not going to do that one. That one's we're not.
Yeah, and I can tie it. I want to say that he actually lived in, but like 90% certain that he lived in Pennsylvania himself directly. The main suspect who got to 31 years versus everyone getting 6 or less.
This is blowing my mind here, dude, because I've long suspected that bank robbery was connected to these kind of activities, and you just provided me some context to which to deep research this relative to the matters we're speaking to today. I don't like to get lost into too many subjects, that aren't really relevant to things I'm interested in, but you've provided me something that hits close to a mystery I've been interested in a long time here, sir. So I appreciate that.
And he's another one of these. So Scott Stediford is actually another one of these people that I've actually spoke directly. It was through the internet or whatever, through like disconnect connections or whatever. I spoke with him once or twice directly.
And what?
What's that?
He was a singer, right? You said.
Yeah, he was a singer of a band called Day of the Sword. They were Christian nationalist, racist as shit. They talked about Zog, Zionist organized government, and all that.
Okay, and so he's definitely espousing these philosophies. I don't like it, but I like to see that we can easily point them out, right, through their manner in which they tell us about. They tell us who they are. So that much.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, he was like, as far as the band, he was the whole band. He played every instrument. If I'm not mistaken, again, this is off the top of my head from like actually being there in the first person.
We're talking a Trent Reznor 9 Inch Nails type environment, then.
Yeah, but it's actually decent music. But anyone watching probably won't like the lyrics, but it's good music. Like you can say where he would if he was like if he was a Tavistock Beatles.
Well,
He
I'm
probably
glad
would
you
have
said
been like
that.
a star chopper.
I'm glad you said that because I'm going to look up this guy who you're describing. But I was painting the dynamic of Trent Reznor in 9 Inch Nails because he's part of this process movement connected to the Manson stuff. He's
Yeah.
deeply connected to all this white national stuff, which I'll get into with some clips here in a moment. I have it on that. It just reminded me of a clip there. But the what were the extracurricular activities of this man? Because Trent Reznor's got a lot of extracurriculars. The Beach Boys. Homeboy just died today.
No,
they were in tight with Manson, right? They had extracurriculars. John Phillips, he had extracurriculars.
No, like
Cocaine Bob, a lot of extracurriculars.
with
You
with the guy like Scott Sedford, I mean, other than the bank robbery and the firearms, he would have been a hardcore Christian nationalist. So he would have been like pretty much Amish, but rob banks and fight the government.
Right, so that's what I'm
If you
saying.
get
So
it,
he's doing the music, right? He's this music guy, but then he's also out there robbing banks and shooting folks, right? That's what I'm saying. These are his extra. That's what I was driving home. I was just trying to drive that home, folks. These are the extra. Just because they're out there singing music doesn't mean they're not out there robbing banks and doing hood rat shit.
Yeah. Well, is that really hood rat shit? Do I give a fuck if the banks get robbed? No,
well, I don't know
I'd
about
like
that,
to see London get shut down.
I'm talking about more of like the indiscriminate fire and hitting civilian, bystanders kind of deal.
Yeah. Like hit the Rothschild headquarters in London, and then
I was gonna say, don't go shoot women and children
0%.
in Ohio. You know what I mean?
Or go hit up when Macron's a teller, because that's where he started as a Rothschild banker. But neither here nor there.
That's what I would argue as far as what's bad about that situation is the indiscriminate fire of innocent bystanders. I suppose would be my number one complaint.
Yeah.
So
again, too. I mean, sometimes I speak out of turn, but again, I might add a different background from you, and sometimes I do speak in ways that
I appreciate we do have different backgrounds. Otherwise, we'd be saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that I would ever do it, but I'm not going to be like, hey, and sometimes I know I'm out of line when I say that shit, but I don't give a fuck.
Well, I can assure you, sir, I'll never hit an innocent bystander because I'm always on target. Just
I'm in Canada, so I won't be fired ever.
What are we looking at here with these connections to the Oklahoma City bombing?
Yeah. So that one, I missed the first page. So that's Clinton Van Zandt. I think so. There's one more thing after this. So Clinton Van Zandt is actually the lead. I think no, this is connection to Oklahoma City bombing. So if you look in there, the Aryan Republican Army, they were directly tied to Timothy McVeigh. They claim, through the Elam City, etc. And that's where I'm saying that from everything that my understanding. Again, this is sealed, but it's sealed, really sealed. So that's who the satellite assets were for, and they were in place before Oklahoma City happened.
Right, and there's evidence of that, and I'll show folks in a minute because I remember seeing a video. You might remember, you've been involved in these subject matters for a very long time. You might remember a fellow, I think he's still probably around. He's a fellow Canadian, such as yourself, named, is it Corbett? The Corbett Report?
Corbett Report, yeah.
Dude,
Corbett Report,
years ago, I first discovered these things circa 2011 or
Jeremy
so.
Corbett.
He did these little clips, like 5-minute clips, 5 minutes on Oklahoma City, 5 minutes on 9/11, and they're not only are they comically in a sarcastic, dry, dark humor sense, which I love, they're very informative. And he shows clips of that Army National Guard camp near Oklahoma City with some aerial imagery of those fucking things. So when you're saying they have all this
I know exactly the place you're talking about. They have fucking satellite surveillance of but they play it off as aerial surveillance from planes, but you're like, no, that's not plane. So man. If you've been around and you see the surveillance that they offer as plane versus it's like no, you're giving yourself away, but you're telling us it's fuck. You're feeding us shit and telling us it's fucking beef.
I knew you'd know what I'm talking about with that.
I skipped over the Clinton Van Zandt stuff because this is my favorite. So I said forced outgoing earlier.
I apologize. I might have skipped over. Let me go back.
Do you know which number it was? If you're going in order. No, there was 3 of them, so I might have skipped over. But Clinton Van Zandt, I'll put it in the show notes again too, but basically, He was the head negotiator for part of the Oklahoma City shit. I mean, part of the Waco shit. Then he got a call from good old Mr. Louis Free, who
He's a
like,
nice
hey,
guy.
do you want to take a
Hunter
Yeah.
Biden's. I call him Hunter Biden's personal spiritual guide because that's the role he'd live.
Hunter Biden's handler?
Well, I mean, that's the one
But,
way to put it. I call him his personal spiritual guide.
So, yeah, his Israeli handler, though, right?
Yeah, old one-eyed Louie.
Yeah, I mean, there might be like there might be reasons why Hunter Biden has those finger leg tattoos, but I mean, that's a deep fucking dark fucking episode. Well, probably on YouTube.
I don't buy the official tale on how old Louis Free lost his eyeball. To be quite honest with you,
I don't either. And it's always funny that you see, it's always funny that you see all these fucking celebrities who do though. I think probably fucking, they always have the black eye, so I think that probably went wrong. When they're black fucking eye operations where they get their fucking promotions or whatever the fuck they do in the dark rooms. Yeah. But hey, that's just a guess.
It's hard to tell, but we know one character that's involved in all this stuff from Oklahoma City to January 6th, the Whitmer stuff, and that is Merrick Garland.
Fucking piece of shit scumbag Merrick fucking Garland. Yeah. So Merrick Garland, for people that don't know, and this is directly from the national or the Oklahoma City National Memorial or whatever. So it's their fucking tribute site to their fucking slaughter of innocent civilians in your name. But and then anyways, so for the 20th, this is where actually that Barry Soetoro, that fucking that agent from Malaysia. That agent from Malaysia, this is where he announced that he wanted to put Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court.
Oh.
Now, I absolutely fucking despise Mitch McConnell and think he needs to be hung by his nutsack.
Yeah, I agree with him on this one.
I'm not saying I'd do it, but this is a fucking amazing thing that he did for America by making sure that guy never gets on the Supreme Court.
I'm glad you said that. I definitely don't like Mitch McConnell. I think he's a piece of shit. But he did, even
he's a CIA agent. I mean, CCP agent.
Dude, I was about to say he's married to the fucking CCP, dude. Let's be honest about the situation.
Yeah. So,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. But I mean, I'll give him credit for it might have been politics over bullshit, but burning fucking Merrick Garland, the fucking George W. Bush asset to fucking make sure to cover up Oklahoma City, make sure that John Doe number 2 was never mentioned in court. Yeah, he did one thing right in his life.
I agree. So in 1995, Merrick Garland was Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General, number 2. Attorney General Janet Reno, number 1, sent him to Oklahoma City, and he served as the federal prosecutor for Timothy McVeigh's initial hearing at Tinker Air Force Base. How, that I just want to hammer home how strange that is for a U.S. attorney, well, in this case, the second in charge U.S. attorney for America, going to be the prosecutor in any fucking case. And we see that again in Idaho Contra. The U.S. attorney for Idaho is now the lead attorney in the prosecution of Brian Kohberger.
What about the fact that Oklahoma City is Oklahoma, and they had a change of venue to Colorado, which a change of venue, like, man, they never do a change of venue. The fucking federal government will always say that they can get a fair jury pool no matter what the fuck happens. So, for them to get a change of venue on that shit, seems like something's way off.
Yes, that is another good way to come to the same conclusion here. This is all a bunch of bullshit by the same network of bullshitters.
Actually, didn't they get a change of venue to Colorado on fucking good old Uncle Ted? Or am I wrong on that? Kaczynski.
Oh man, I don't know, dude. I was about to say I don't remember.
I could be wrong on that, but
I wouldn't be surprised.
I could be wrong on that. Sometimes
I actually agree with the townsfolk of Lincoln, Montana, and Ted Kaczynski wasn't that bad of a guy.
No, man. Anyone who's anyone who's ever fucking read his book, like first off, or his manifesto, there's nothing wrong with that manifesto. I mean,
Well,
it's almost
I,
like he foresaw like 2025 in 1985.
you ain't kidding, and I'm sure you recall he was made out to be, obviously the devil there in the '90s. So I was at here. Quick side tangent. I was a groomsman in a wedding in Lincoln, Montana,
Yeah,
the place where his cabin was, in the summer
yeah,
of 2000. So not long after, right? Was it
yeah,
3 years after his arrest? So
yeah,
it's pretty fresh in the small mountain western Montana mountain town's mind, all the townsfolk. And my dude was the son of the doctor in town, so everyone, literally, when I say everyone was at
yeah,
the fucking wedding, him and his wife was from that
yeah,
town too. I met him in the Air Force.
yeah,
Somehow he joined the Air Force and got stationed back in Montana somehow. But we
yeah,
met in basic training actually. We've been dudes since then. But and then the police academy
yeah,
together. But so fast forward this town, like, well, I'm obviously gonna be asking all these people about fucking Ted Kaczynski, and I did, dude. And I'm not gonna
yeah.
lie to you, dude. No one had anything bad to say about the guy.
Well, dude, the other thing is, though, just think of what their official story is. I mean, if anything, I would say that he was a patsy. He was a fucking MK Ultra. That they knew they had his writings, and then they just put them in the paper, and they ran them in the New York Times. Because, let's be honest, like that was the whole thing with Janet Reno, fucking Louis Free. Again, too, that ties into terrorism bill, right?
Oh, you cut
But
out on he's a
yeah,
patsy,
just
dude.
like,
I totally agree. But what were you saying? I cut out when you said he's a patsy.
oh, you tie in like Janet Reno, you tie in Louis Free, and then the New York Times. The New York Times running the
Yeah,
manifesto
dude.
for him, the New York Times to get the fuck out of here, like.
For sure, dude. For sure. And the story of how his brother fucking turned him in. That whole story is fucking nonsense.
And then the other thing is though too, like even just think of what is the story that he's creating these
Yeah,
bombs and he's riding a fucking BMX from fucking Montana
yeah,
to California for like a decade, then he stops and
yeah,
then he picks up again like a decade later.
yeah. I think even to Colorado in some instances. So don't correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they not? If I'm not mistaken, they found 0 bomb making materials inside his one room cabin. So where was he making these
Yeah, but
bombs?
then they allegedly found it. It took them years to break down his ciphers, which is still breaking down allegedly. And it's like, get the fuck out of here! Like, put that shit in the AI, and they're gonna tell you that everything you fucking deciphered is a lie. You know, like he didn't write it
Oh,
in
dude,
English or
that's what I'm
whatever. He
saying,
has,
dude. The whole thing seems suspect from every angle, is what we're describing here. And again, it goes back to MK Ultra, does it
yeah.
not?
Yeah, and I mean, even like the whole way the trial fucking occurred, like I mean, they even did that fucking Netflix show, which again too is a Bernays fucking cousin, so fuck them. But then they're talking about like, oh, like his lawyer was like bribing him with Reese peanut butter cups or something. Like, what the
I,
fuck? Like, and then
yeah,
they have to get
I just wanted to
again
ask
too
Google
the
what they
order of the
thought about
movie.
it, and I'm pretty.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm pretty sure this is a great example of how AI is full of shit, because I do recall the Kaczynski cabin having the exact packaging of the previous bomb, an identical version of it, right? Because they're like, oh, look, he's got a set.
Yeah.
But they're trying to say he had a bunch of other shit. AI is, and I don't think that's accurate. I was like, look, we found this
Well,
ready to go bomb, and he's
the other thing is though too, right? Is
because first of all,
let's go back.
why would you connect it to the bomb
Right.
previous to transporting it for shipment? Again, none of it makes any
Yeah.
sense. But AI is trying to tell me right now that it's got more shit, so I'll have to look more into that, because I don't remember there being anything else besides the go-to, look, we found the smoking gun bomb evidence here.
Well, let's go back to what we were saying earlier about you have like fucking the movie about the order, then you have this fucking movie or the miniseries about the Unabomber, the Manhunter, or whatever, right? Again, they always
Right.
mythologize the fucking. They always mythologize the Hannibal who makes it possible so they can burn down Carthage and hide their crimes.
Do you realize there's?
And that's just what I always like.
You realize there's a contingent of folks that believe Ted Kaczynski is the Zodiac killer?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of people that believe that fucking 2 planes took down 3 buildings.
Well, Did you know there's a guy that follows my podcast here that believes that Bernie Sanders is the Zodiac killer?
I did not know that. That's an interesting one.
Sadly, I know, and unfortunately, I'm going to get another message about it following this commentary. But who knows? Maybe I will.
Bernie Sanders is an interesting person, like his rape fantasies, but I couldn't see him. I mean, let's be honest. I know a lot of people are going to think I'm way the fuck out there, but I think there's more reason to believe that fucking Joe Rogan is Anton LaVey's son than the police detective in New Jersey who like beat his mom so she ran and lived like a block away from the Satanic Church.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. But let's put a pin in that for a later day, please, sir. Because I also don't want to get lost on Janet Reno as a man. Janet Reno is obviously a man. Why are we questioning this, right? You know what I mean? But that's a great comic because I definitely think Will Ferrell looks more like a woman as Janet Reno than Janet Reno looked like a woman as Janet Reno.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest though too. When you, I mean, there's again too. I don't necessarily want to take this in a way that could be like, oh, it's anti-Semitic. Well, get the fuck out of here. But you know, you look at the designists and they're the Kabbalistic and the transgenderism, the androgynistic aspects of their belief. Would I be hard pressed to believe that Janet Reno was also androgynistic? No, not at all. You know,
dude.
But little side note, but
so beefy. I mean, super beefy lady.
Yeah.
Well, on that same side note, dude, no, we're not doing. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it, Jonah. I'm not doing it. I want to go over these clips with you. So when we're talking about all of these details we've discussed tonight, and we're going to go back to Furman, Northern Idaho, and the order. I'm not sure why I'm doing this hand movement. We're gonna circle back there with these clips from the authors of two seminal books on Mark Furman, written in 1995 and 1996, contemporary to the events of the OJ Simpson criminal and civil trial. These books.
Wait.
What I'm saying is we've known this shit since then publicly.
Yeah. Can I ask you a side note? Speaking of attorneys in the 1990s, Marsha Clark, dude. Hey, is Marsha Clark a dude? I'm saying 100%. 100% she's a dude too.
I mean, given her Scientology ties, I'm leaning towards probably. So on that note, she's a Scientologist married to another Scientologist. The guy that marries them is a different Scientologist minister. That minister later murders her husband. She divorces that man.
Yeah.
That same minister marries her and her second husband. Her second husband's in the executive hierarchy of the church. He's a billionaire contractor.
Yeah.
Right? The minister then murders her first husband.
Yeah.
And they say, oops, it was an accident. This all went down to LA County. She's a prosecutor. She's working for Charles Manson's friend, Ira Reiner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what are we fucking talking? So she could be a dude. She could be a fucking junkie, dude. Shit's getting weird at that point.
Ira Reiner, let's just put it again too. Let's just put it out there. Like he's, I would say, MK Mockingbird. You know.
Oh, he's an operative of a managerial position, of what you're implying.
Yeah, he's MK Mockingbird. You know, everyone wants to talk MK Ultra. Everyone wants to talk about Operation Mockingbird, but no one wants to talk about the patents of the fucking mind control in the television that they turn on all the time.
Oh no, I view him more as a Winston the Wolf type of character, right?
Yeah, more of a Ruddy, you know, a programmer
from
for Rand. Well, what kind of programmer? No, Ruddy from fucking The Offer, the guy who made Godfather 1. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say they serve similar capacities within spook operations, but Reiner comes from he's an attorney. You know what I mean? But I do think they serve similar hood rat shit functions. But Reiner's definitely a cleanup man, right? He comes in. I think he's more of a cleanup man probably than a managerial dude like Ruddy is. But Ruddy seems more analytical and able to manage things. Whereas Reiner seems like he's there to mop shit up, and he doesn't do it that well.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying. I was thinking more like men, like I do when I watch The Offer. I was like, literally, the only reason I started paying attention is like because he's like, "Oh, I'm from Canada. I'm a programmer for Rand." I'm like, "What the fuck you just say?" As soon as I heard Rand, I was like, let's go back to episode 1 and actually start watching this."
Well, and if you knew that detail and you've read weird scenes inside the canyon, you'll understand that the neocons, the folks that later become the neocons, such as Paul Wolfowitz and gang, they're all hanging out in Laurel Canyon with the director of Rand. They're at the very same time Ruddy's doing these things.
You mean Irving Kristol, the Marxist-Leninist who infiltrated the alleged right wing, and they haven't been the fucking America First or right wing, including fucking cocksucker Donald the Grump.
I always appreciate the extensive knowledge and details you have, sir. You are correct. So it is weird, I agree. But Reiner comes in at the Manson trial and he fucks it all up. Manson's like, I got a friend, he needs to be her attorney, and they're like, yeah, and then that's when the circus begins. And then he comes in as the LA district attorney. He gets elected. Who financed that? In 80.
And wait.
Right.
Can I just say one thing though? Right. When have you ever seen like a U.S. or a district attorney write a book about the biggest fucking case as it's happening to be a bestseller? Like they're not even sentenced yet, and the fucking book's out. Like, get the fuck out of here! And then the movie.
Oh, for sure. That's obviously telling of some machinations of some what I like to call, it's a very technical term, hood rat shit. But regarding the I don't know where I was going. I forgot. I apologize. I had a blank.
No. You got some clips still.
What was I just saying before that?
Oh, we were talking about Hood Rat Movie OC. Oh, you mean the fiction that was sold as based on a true story?
That's the one.
I mean,
the relative, it was something about OJ. I'm sure it'll come back to me. Oh no, here we go. Ira Reiner. So we see Ira Reiner getting elected in November of 1983. I believe that is the triggering event for the green light for the murder of Roy Raden. Then Roy Raden's then engrossed into a scheme in which to come back to Los Angeles, which he did not want to do. And then, but they could now do it because they had top cover over the situation, right? And that's thanks to Ira Reiner, who would go on to prosecute the Hillside Stranglers, Richard Ramirez, and he would let old Cocaine Bob walk on the Cotton Club murders, strangely enough.
I got an interesting take for you.
He would, however, prosecute and allegedly, and I stress allegedly, sitting in for murder in life in the state of California, the wife of the Medellin drug cartel's #1 guy in America, Karen Greenberger, or her Iran-Contra name, Laney Jacobs.
If we're talking in Hollywood, I got an interesting take on you.
Well, for sure, but I would like to hear your opinion. Why does no one talk about? Why? I just want to hear. Why do you think no one talks about Charles Manson friend, literally documented friend and associate? The district attorney of Los Angeles allows Cocaine Bob to walk on murder charges, but prosecutes his co-conspirator, the Medellin cartel's #1 dude and America's wife. And allegedly, she just murked that #1 dude 6 months prior to her arrest for these murders. So why does no one talk about this episode of the process and the Iran-Contra with Cocaine Bob?
Yeah. Well, I mean, can we talk about why no one ever mentions Kay Griggs?
Well, that's a great question too. But what are your thoughts though on that? Why do you think no? Because to be quite honest with you,
I think
I've been following this Idaho 4 case since November 2022, Thanksgiving time, and I'd never even considered Cocaine Bob connections to this, but in the last 6 months,
I would say
it's gotten so Cocaine Bob connected and so Manson family connected, and it's a Manson family style murder that I'm almost full process at this point.
I would say that with the Greenberger, if you ask me my true opinion, because it was a sanctioned hit. I mean, when it comes down to it, right? And they will just,
You're saying they got the wife to kill him, right? And then they take the wife out, right? Because they don't prosecute Bob. They only prosecute her for the murder of Roy Raden. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, if you have something like that where there's obvious connections that are being overlooked, it's like, okay, um, okay, let's go ahead. Steve Pachenik wrote a book where he says that the U.S. Murdered Aldo Moro, which is a sitting head of the fucking foreign country, and that foreign
Yeah.
country still has no arrest warrant for Steve Pachenik, who is always on Bill Hicks' Infowars, and
Oh, you mean Jack
he's
Ryan?
portrayed. You mean, yeah. But Bill Hicks always says, "Oh yeah, this guy knows the details. He worked on the inside." No, he is Henry Kissinger's second fucking hand man. He wasn't the first hand; he was the second hand man. So get
Right.
the fuck out of here when you.
And he was Jack Ryan in the Tom Clancy tales, right?
He was Tom Clancy's fucking ghostwriter or co-writer.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I'm saying,
yeah,
dude. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, then,
But
my point being there,
Bill
my
Hicks,
point being there,
yeah,
my point being there is you got Cocaine Bob and his longtime BFF Henry Kissinger. Don't make
yeah.
me show the shirtless Bob pic. I'll do it. But you got that connection, right? And then you got Pachenik,
Yeah.
in his situation with Clancy. And what's the story they tell there in Clear and Present Danger? Seems very Iran Contra like, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, it's almost like again too, like when I think some of it though too is just humiliation rituals too, right? Like they're gonna humiliate you, but then all of a sudden these people turn out doing better for themselves in the
Well,
end. Right?
yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure to the extent of humiliation rituals, other than it just keeps people in check within your criminal enterprise.
Yeah, that
Shirtless
too.
Bob. I don't know what they were doing.
That too.
I don't like it. I'm sure I wouldn't approve. I don't want any part of whatever they're doing. Old cocaine. But no, I think that's an interesting point you bring in there, because there is these dynamics that are obviously present.
The one thing about that photo is, I'll say, you can tell it's from the 80s because it's like they're not coked up and they're not sweating like the fucking shit today.
Super coked up. Well, I appreciate all these details and tales here. If I may bring this to a close here relative to Cocaine Bob and Iran Contra cocaine trafficking with the Medellin cartel of Karen Greenberger, et cetera, and why these things are still relevant today to this Idaho Contra. So that's Iran Contra. Despite we calling it the Cotton Club murders or the Greenberger situation, this is all fucking Iran. Her Iran Contra name was Lanny Jacobs. Like, she had a fucking code name.
I will say, again, I brought the name up, everyone.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, since I brought the name up, everyone should look into Kay Griggs because she has some information on this too. Off the top of my head, I don't want to misspeak, but she definitely has some information on those operations, to say the least.
For sure, dude. For sure. And the dead people don't talk. So I'm surprised she was still alive in the first place. That's what I'm saying. I'm very suspect about all these details, but I'm even more suspect when I see all these connections from the Manson family murders of the process. Again, Bob, Cocaine Bob, that is, introduces Sharon Tate and
Melissa Joan Hart.
Well, I don't. He introduces Sharon Tate and Polanski to he brokers that marriage, right? Yeah. They're all doing these process church things, right? Manson, the process church things. The epicenter of those activities connect directly to the Idaho 4 murders through Colonel Paul Tate, his protege, the father of Sharon Tate, U.S. Army Intelligence, Colonel Paul Tate. His protege is this Greek fella, U.S. Army Intelligence, with a Greek surname I don't recall, but his daughter's name is the Gooch. She's the lead detective, most integral detective, I would argue, for the Idaho State Police in the Idaho 4 murders in the case against Brian Kohberger, right? So we have that direct connection, right? Again, the Tate murders were a seminal event in her life in law enforcement and where she lives in life, and she describes it all in an interview that I'll put a link in the details. And again, they follow her father's on numerous assignments with Colonel Tate, and she describes they moved to the Bay Area in 1970, and she doesn't see her father for the next few years because he's doing top secret work. Well, I would argue that top secret work is the assistance of Paul Tate, who at that very same time went undercover in the hippie movement, grew his hair long, and went undercover investigating his daughter's murder, as the legend goes. So that's how deeply connected the investigation is there to that situation. And then you got Furman. Furman in the OJ situation, that Cocaine Bob's all over that, but you got Furman doing commentary here, right? And then you got Philip Van Adder, the lead detective in that case. He's on the scene at the Tate house as a young officer.
Yeah.
The other young officer on scene at the Tate house is the first responding officer, according to record, on the scene on Bundy Drive of the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. How in the fuck is it the same responding officer, first responding officer on both of those scenes? And how is Van Adder at both of those scenes? He's also the man that arrests Polanski in 1977. So this weird process church dynamic within these same characters seems to be perpetrating its ugly face in Latah County, Idaho. So this white nationalism thing, I think, is one of the strongest underlying currents of that. And I think it all goes back to the order, as you're describing it as we started the show. And if I may bring us in for a landing here by going over a few of these clips, I'd like to get some of your commentary on the order and some of these things that were developed by authors.
Can I?
You're good.
As you were speaking, can I actually just bring one thing up that I don't know if you've ever, because I've actually, remember there was during the whole Donald Trump Russiagate thing, there was that Peter Strzok.
Wait a second. You mean Peter Strzok, the dual FBI CIA chief of counterintelligence? How that's a dual position?
Wait.
I don't fucking know.
Do you know who his father is? Do you know who? No. Go ahead.
He testified to that. That's a real thing, though. He testified to that.
No, but do you know who his father is? I've actually done the research and I pulled up.
I'm assuming Mr. Strzok.
So in 1979, he was located in Tehran as the head of Bell Helicopter, head of sales of Bell Helicopter. But in 1983,
you mean to tell me his father was the head of some Nazi business in Iran in 1979 during Iran-Contra?
Wait. In 1983, he was in Kenya. I think it might have been in Ethiopia, as the head of distribution of a Christian charities organization. So he went from fucking Bell Helicopter to Christian charities within 3 years.
Jonah, he's just very skilled. He's very prolific, man. He's got a lot of skill sets. He just happens to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How crazy is that you have these generational things, right? It's a generational thing within the same network, right? Is what you're describing?
And you know who else is said to have been running that operation, right? Again, I haven't been able to prove this one, but I've come across the name quite a few times. Speaking of dudes that may be women, is Stanley Dunham. Ann Dunham.
Oh yeah,
the father of Barry Soetoro.
Well, when the president of France is married to his husband, man, wife, then father, husband, man, wife, father. All bets are off. I'm open to it, man. I'm open to
it. There's a lot of interesting connections too with the Strzok family tied to Obama, like the brother who's a Jesuit. I think it's Jesuit. It might be just a regular Catholic or Christian missionary in Kenya while Obama is visiting there as a teenager or something. But they just happen to be like 10 miles apart, but that's just coincidental.
These are all coincidences, and it's just a coincidence that Mark Furman's connected to this domestic terror Nazi organization that runs these 10-year anniversary campaigns of events, which in 1984 seems to be a lot of bank robberies and some murders, and it seems to be kicked off in 1994 by the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, and then perpetrated in activities, bank robberies, and murders such as the Kehoe brothers in that shootout we watched earlier. Let's listen to some clips from some investigative journalists who want to describe these things to us from 25 years ago. What you got, bud?
Real quick, though. Real quick, I was going to say that I would also like to add that, we have these, again, Richard Butler and William Pierce, who I would say one I know for a fact is a federal informant. You say two. I don't know the second one, but I haven't looked into it. So I would say go ahead.
2 for 2.
Yeah. So I would say that you have guys again too. If you look at the sentencing of the order, you get a guy like David Lane sentenced to 200 years. I think there's another guy sentenced to 200 years. Robert Matthews is killed in a standoff in Whidbey Island. And everyone else gets
wait. Whidbey, was it Whidbey Island?
Whidbey.
Washington?
WHIDBY. Yeah.
Washington?
Dude. He had like a fucking 3-day standoff.
That's the head of naval intelligence. Operation.
Yeah, he had like 3-day standoff and fucking fired off like 10,000 rounds and like hundreds of fucking FBI's were surrounding him, and then the house burned down just like Waco.
I remember the elements of what you're describing there in the massive gunfire situation, but I'm pretty sure that's the head of naval intelligence is located on Whidbey Island.
That's Robert Matthews, December 8th of 1984. Like, I mean, again, too, I'm not into that movement, but I respect the fuck out of that guy if his story is true.
Yeah, dude.
He held them off for like 3 days.
But when we're talking spooks, dude, why wouldn't it be right outside a spook operation, right?
Yeah, I guess it's that too. I mean, that could be it. It could have been just all a spook operation, and he had to be reassissed, and then fucking, I guess, just David. Because David Lane and the other guy were the activists.
It promotes, exactly. It promotes this folklore within this movement, which they're trying to create. And again, it's the egregore of the situation, right? It's not. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I like your idea because I think it's the same thing. That's what I say. It's the magic show you're presenting. It's not what the actual happens. It's what you convince folks in their minds of what occurred. So it's the egregore, as you put it.
Yeah, and I mean. How again too? Like I said at the start of the show, I've been brainwashed by their magic show, and now you have me thinking like, fuck, was I brainwashed by this one? Because I actually thought like someone. Did I actually think someone like? Because I actually know someone who worked with someone who did the whole standoff, which was impressive too. So I mean, that one I know is real because I know like someone who's directly related to it, which is separate, you know.
No, dude, that's awesome. Like that's an awesome experience that you can have firsthand experience in witnessing some of these people we're talking about, right? The culture, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say it like that, I'm like, fuck. Could he be the Special Agent McVeigh that got assigned to a new fucking field office, especially in 1984?
That's what I'm saying, dude. Because check this out. This is what I'm talking about. This is the epicenter of activity I'm talking about on a very tiny place called Whidbey Island. On 17 January 1941, almost 11 months before the United States entered World War II, the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations asked the Commandant of the 13th Naval Division, that's the Pacific Fleet, to find a location to rearm and refuel U.S. Navy patrol planes defending Puget Sound. So that's then set up a radar operations, etc. That's been that base has been the epicenter of all West Coast and Pacific naval intel operations since January 17th, 1941.
And you see, like I say, I'm Canadian, so I don't really pay attention to the U.S. military.
Dude, I didn't
like Phoenix Project.
I didn't connect because I read about this shit years ago, dude. I read about this shit years ago.
You didn't pay attention to the skinhead shit, right?
Deep in O&I.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, you know, again too, like you had that military experience, I have that skinhead experience, and that's like one epicenter, and you know, like. As soon as we talk together, it's like, oh wait, it's like I said with Nick, and I mean, I'm great with analogies, but they could be offensive. But man, when you're untangling all these fucking connections, it's like trying to open up a fucking teenager's Playboy from the 1990s. Those fucking pages aren't coming apart.
I hear you.
It's a great analogy.
I'm glad you said that. We do bring. Oh no, it's a good analogy. I'm not arguing that. We do bring these unique perspectives together. And again, I didn't until you said Whidbey Island. I hadn't been recently looking into O&I stuff until recent years because I'm of the mindset, and I have this noted theory that O&I and CIA are in this long-standing secret war. And there's a lot of shit that gets caught in the crossfire of that. But this dude's right outside their fucking West Coast operational headquarters. Dude, that should not be ignored. That should not. I'm gonna have to. I want to look more into that. I'm just saying that should not be ignored.
Oh, dude, if you watch the fire, so they burned the fuck out of that house, and you can hear all the rounds popping off and shit. But it's 1984 clips, so I mean, like...
Yeah,
but anyway...
until you said that, I didn't connect the two in my brain hole there. I'm like, holy shit, that's Whidbey Island. No,
and again, too, like I say, like... Again, like I say, like they could, like this could be literally programming from when I was a fucking teenager that wasn't broken until just now. And I'm open to the concept. I'm open to the prospect ads. This is programming that I couldn't break until you fucking pointed that out. I'm like, oh, fuck me.
Yeah, well, fuck me too here,
So
Jonah, because would you believe there's an individual deeply connected to the Idaho 4 situation in Moscow, Idaho, who has a home right outside that
it
same
would
naval
be.
air station on Whidbey Island? Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that's what I'm
So I
saying. Like,
was fucked.
I got a lot of Whidbey Island stuff to look into here
Yeah.
because that is not a very large place.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's funny now that you mention it too, because like I said, I have no problem blaming that the Turner Diaries as a Fed operation, but
Hot damn. Let's go with
like
that notion
the
because
Robert
that's
J.
here on these
Matthews,
clips
like
that I want to.
you know,
Wait, well, I'm glad you said that's on these clips. They go
yeah.
over these
Go
Turner
ahead.
Diaries, the philosophies, the actions and activities. So
Yeah.
if we can do this for another 30 minutes, I appreciate your time, sir. But if you got another 30 minutes, I'd like to go over these clips here and to
Yeah.
get your
No,
thoughts.
we can run through it.
This first one is
Yeah.
it's a these are clips from a radio interview with Dave Emery. He was the underling to Mae Brussel. Folks know who that is. And he
Okay.
interviewed Stephen Singular and Stephen Worth, two authors who in 1995,
Okay.
when literally Stephen Singular's book came out when the trial started, because the murders occur in June of 94, and he
Yeah.
gets a call in August from the prosecutor's office giving him a bunch of description of evidence that was planted, and then over time feeding him
Yeah.
information of how it's connected to the Nazis in Hayden Lake, right? Because Stephen Singular
Yeah.
wrote a book
Yeah.
about the murder of Alan Berg, so that's why these people reached out to him in the first place,
Yeah.
right? So, and then
Yeah.
Stephen Worth, a similar contact from another law enforcement official within the Los Angeles law enforcement authorities, and he also has described these in intimate detail this nationwide domestic terror plan that was hatched in Hayden Lake, like the one in '84, and they were doing a 10-year anniversary of that previous
Yeah.
terror campaign in '84. They were doing it in '94, and Mark Furman was a major figure in that, who had connections up there already, as they said. And lo and behold, and when Mark Furman gets fired / retired after his plea deal for a felony and no jail time in October of '95, he moves to Hayden Lake, Idaho, Sand Point, just outside of Hayden Lake, Idaho, right where 3 of the victims in this murder case are from. So again, Furman's commentary, being a Nazi felon from this area with deep connections to hood rat shit, has never sat well with me when I see him on TV talking about the Idaho 4 murders and the case against Brian Coburn.
And again, again, I will point out real quick when we mentioned Hayden Lake, with
well, let's say that.
with
Let's
the
say that for
I'm from near.
Let's say that for a couple of the
Go
clips
on.
when we talk about it. But one more connection there with Furman and the whole situation is the other person. So he's on their media running propaganda. The person who's actually behind running all the propaganda in the Idaho 4 case is none other than Cocaine Bob's real close associate, Graydon Carter, who he selected to be the executive producer of his own autobiography film. Yeah, that's how tight they were.
Oh shit.
He's running, he's running all the propaganda ops. So that's what I'm saying, dude. It's way too spooky, all the Cocaine Bob factor here. But let's go back to like you're saying, Hayden Lake and the PATCON situation first.
Written by William Luther Pierce, who's the head of the National Alliance, arguably the most important domestic Nazi group. They also have a publishing wing called National Vanguard Books, which publishes the Turner Diaries. They also publish a book called Hunter, about a Nazi assassin who goes around dispatching people of color and interracial couples. They also have another fascinating book called A Serpent's Walk, which is about a Nazi takeover in the middle of the 21st century by the descendants of the SS, who infiltrate the U.S. military and who also put together a formidable financial underground and begin buying into the U.S. opinion-forming media in order to sway the American people to a Nazi viewpoint. Now, the Oklahoma City bombing was purportedly modeled, and we should bear in mind that neither Mr. Nichols nor Mr. McVeigh have yet to stand trial. The allegations brought by the prosecution maintain that the crime allegedly committed by those two was modeled after the bombing of FBI headquarters in the Turner Diaries, a bombing performed almost exactly as we are told, at least, that the Oklahoma City bombing was executed. You note in Legacy of Deception, Stephen, that as you were watching the proceedings in the OJ Simpson case, that the only story which successfully pushed the story off of the front page was the Oklahoma City bombing. And then Stephen Worth, in your book, your anonymous informant maintains that the Oklahoma City bombing was actually pulled off by the same sorts of elements that allegedly killed Nicole and Ron.
Correct. And as a matter of fact, there's some information.
Well, there you go. Connects them all right there. They knew that in 96.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Now, one thing I'll say on this is, again, too, anyone who hasn't read the Turner Diaries, I mean, you might not necessarily agree with the message, but I think that it is definitely something. It's not a long read. It's like 150 pages or some shit like that.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend everyone at least take the time to read it to see and why they always push it on every event, because it's kind of like a manifesto. It's kind of like a predictive programming that's very easy. It's it's a page turner, as they say. I mean, it's not going to be like fucking Steve Pachenik, Tom Clancy, but it's definitely it's definitely better than what you would expect from a little racist organization in Virginia.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because to that note, it's a manifesto or a playbook in which to run these operations, these domestic gladio terror operations, that I think is what you're inferring there. If I'm hearing you correctly, right? Well, on that note,
yeah, most definitely. I mean,
on that note, let's check out this clip on Furman and his ideologies, and it speaks to what you just said there, Jonah.
Talk about this better than I can. That it was more or less circumstantial evidence and conjecture, except for the fact that if you took almost direct quotes out of my book, Talk to Death, some of the things that the neo-Nazis in there said, some of the things that appeared in the infamous Turner Diaries, which was a big part of that book. The group that killed Berg, their blueprint came out of that particular book. If you took some of what Furman said on those tapes that surfaced during the trial, they are a direct parallel, essentially.
We got the long and the short of it there. The blueprint, I think, was the important part, right? You were saying blueprint, and this is how they run these operations.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, the way Furman's talking about these things, it's even the blueprint as they're describing.
You know what? I think if my mind's serving correctly, I always thought it was interesting that his name was Fuhrerman. I mean, Furman. You know, it was F-U-H-R, right?
What's his lineage, right? Where's he coming from? You know,
yeah.
He's a powerful figure, it seems, in this network, and I'm just saying, I think he was probably born into it, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely, I found that interesting, but at the same time, there was also Grant Fuhrer, the goalie, who was black. So, I mean,
Sure. Well, let's look at some more of these connections here between all these Nazi connections, Manson, and this will get us right back up to Idaho and the Hayden Lake activities in Idaho 4 situations.
Yeah, what appears to be the biggest problem is that the public at large, when you mention neo-Nazis, I mean, they've got a vision of, Hitler stomping down the street. They don't realize just to what extent they have infiltrated a lot of areas of the United States and what their aim is. On June 6th of 94, this is several days before these what we call assassinations, others call murders, etc. The Viper militia plan was put into force. That's a plan that was set all across the United States, and really it's a plan to take over the United States from the New World Order, as they characterize it.
This was June 6th of 94?
That's right.
50th anniversary of D-Day, we should note.
Yep, I've got a copy of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's a lot of coincidences. Just like the first officer on to the scene was a fellow named Richard Walley, W-A-L-L-E-Y. He's also one of the first officers at the Bianca murders and the Sharon Tate. I mean, it's coincidence, but it's like coincidence can happen, and people think that something. If you don't look at it in the right way, that case doesn't make any sense at all. If someone's got a cut on their left hand, that means that they had to commit the murder. But that's not always the case.
Van Adder also, by the way, was involved in the Manson investigation. A late colleague of mine named Mae Brussel alleged, and I suspect there's a lot to what she had to say, that there were some, not only Nazi connections, but perhaps even some intelligence connections to the whole Manson situation. We haven't got time to go into that, but we might want to bear that in mind, in the back of our minds as we mull over some of the overlaps between some of these investigations. Now, Stephen Singular, one of the problems that you had.
So, what are your thoughts there, Jonah? We hear the Nazis, this infiltration stuff, this long-term plans. What are your thoughts, Jonah, with the spook operations? Kind of heard it all there.
I mean, the one thing that I'm thinking of, Borman and the Bilderbergs, and you see, I don't know if you've read much of his work, Joseph Farrell. He's kind of really going into the Fourth Reich and that letter from the 1950s where they say they never lost the war. They just went underground to. So, I mean, there's definitely some interesting ties that way. I mean, there's definitely some ties that way. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say the USA won the war, but then they named their Air Force Base Thule after the Thule Society.
Well, there's a good example, right?
Just saying. I mean, that seems a little odd.
Well, the Air Force, the CIA, and NASA, they're all very Nazi-fied from the origins, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we see the same repeating pattern there, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Again, too, if we're talking about the Thule Society, fucking talk about all the magicians there. Now, everyone wants to talk about that weird whatever the fuck. I will point out that everyone talks about that castle where they have the black sun on the floor.
Yep.
Now, if you actually go to Google Earth and do a search for that castle, it's a fucking pyramid from the sky, and that black sun is in the center, so you have the Eye of Providence. But I mean, that's
where Kehoe went, right? Kehoe, whenever they're doing NATO rituals, style rituals,
and that might take you.
I just assume they're when they say satanic rituals, I just assume they're jamming things.
Google or maps. Yeah. It might take you 10 seconds on Google Maps and switch to satellite view to figure that out.
Well, on to veer away from butt jammings and satellites, let's go back here to the story of how these. So I think it is an interesting aspect to consider, though, that we point to these white nationalist organizations in Idaho. We point to the process being Nazi folks like that, like Cocaine Bobbin Gang, the Manson situation, the Tate situation, the Gooch Factor. That's what to call it, the Gooch Factor.
Yeah.
But what if there is this underground Nazi network that seems to be accurately described in the documents you're describing, and they're the ones who are really orchestrating all of these events behind the scenes, and these are just lackeys for the organizations, and so is the Sovereign Order of St. John.
Well, that's going to point that out.
Who helped the Vatican? I know for a fact Project Paperclip Nazis came into America and their family members with under fake names on Vatican passports issued from the Juarez embassy. I've seen it.
Yeah, and what I was going to point out, though, too, I mean, I think it's very interesting that, you have that 1993 operation on the Sovereign Order of St. John's. They refer to them as white supremacists, but they never mentioned the Knights of Malta. So is it
That's
internal fighting?
We have that documented. They're the Knights of Malta. We got Knights of Malta. They're the Knights of Malta, right? And we see the Vatican and this underground Nazi network establishing. They're working hand in hand to establish this underground Nazi network, infiltrate not just America, everywhere.
Yeah,
right. That's what I'm saying, dude.
Most definitely.
So we're pointing at these Nazis, I know, but I'm saying I think there is a strong argument to be made that like the things you're pointing out of this underground network may be controlling these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah,
most definitely. It's definitely. It's definitely. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on these repeating 10-year campaigns? Because again, it seems like we've documented the bank robberies you were pointing out in your slideshow, the Kehoe brothers, right? And on that same note, if you start looking at the murder campaign of Israel Keys, it looks a lot like a 10-year campaign of the 2000s, the mid-aughts, if you ask me, friend.
Can I point out something?
And they all know each other. They all
talk.
fucking know each other too, right? Over vast
Can I
periods
point
of
out
time and
something?
distance, they all fucking know each other.
I want to point out something that when I just did this first show with Raven, I think it was in 2022, where I brought up April 19th. So off the top of my head, just some of the historical events that happened on April 19th. Both of the Sarnaev brothers were arrested on April
Yup.
19th. Yes, they were both arrested. Tamerlane was not shot. The video is still out there.
You mean
Oklahoma City
to tell
happened.
me the nephews of the CIA guy who was married to the Eastern European operations chief CIA guy? Was it the dude's
Yeah.
father-in-law? You mean to tell me that dude's nephews?
Yeah, they were both arrested on April 19th. Oklahoma City happened April 19th.
Sir, you mean the older one that was married to the granddaughter of the founder of the Skull and Bones? These are the same Sarnaev brothers? Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah. So Oklahoma City happened on April 19th. Waco happened on April 19th. Lexington Concord happened on April 19th. The Ghetto of Warsaw Uprising happened on April 19th. Charles Mason was convicted on April 19th. It's now when you go back to the Babylonian calendar, April is actually the first month of the year, which would make it 119. So you get 9 and 1, the 1 went in reverse. So I mean, when you're talking about anniversaries, if you look on specific dates, they hit the fuck out of specific dates.
Did you say Columbine was on
419? Yeah, or is it 420? Wasn't it? Hitler's birthday.
That's also that's an 8/8 birthday. That's all Heil Hitler, right? That's his birthday, right?
Yeah. Oh, again, I meant to mention Jason Aldean, right? He did that. Maui happened, and he announces the club all on the 8/8, which is Heil Hitler again.
Don't forget April 29th, 1992. There was a riot on the streets. Where were you? We're repeating that right now, right? That's the Sublime song. We're going through the same nonsense. We're just saying, like, you know, these anniversaries was 33 years ago was the last LA riots, right?
But what I'll say is,
started, I think, in April, but they went full scale later, I believe, right?
And it's kind of funny though too, right? Because when we're talking about Waco, like I actually have the photo, and it's really funny because David Koresh was a white separatist, white power organization, but when you got the picture of the helicopter, it says Rodney, we support you as the Rodney King. So
typical.
Like that's what they hung out their window, but they wanted everyone to believe that just like the Texas Department of Child Care sort of did all their research and said there was no child sex abuse, but the FBI came in and said there was. When did the FBI ever do research that over the state child health care department?
I'll give you one better, sir, relative to this year specific circumstances here concerning all this white national nonsense. Did you know that the Orenthal J. Simpson case, the state of California versus Orenthal J. Simpson, that is, for the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, apparently that set off this 1994 10-year anniversary of domestic nonsense terror campaign? Do you know that they came back 3 days after allegedly testing the blood and say, we did DNA tests and we confirmed it's OJ Simpson's? Go fuck yourself. They can't even do that fast today, dude. That's how preposterous these circumstances are that we're sold to believe is fucking real. And it's a whole fucking campaign of nonsense. But I think this one of the very important characteristics in the underlying combination of all these varying groups is the white nationalist concepts and ideas, which includes these motherfuckers right here. And if I may play the next clip.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Anyhow, one of the things was that Skinner described Nicole as a traitor. She was German, who basically was, epitomized the white Aryan nation's beliefs, blonde, blue-eyed, although she was bleached, blonde, blue-eyed, but she bore what they considered mud children, traitors, which is, to them, that was worse than anything. It was degrading the white group so that they felt it as a traitor, and they have a way of getting rid of traitors. Slitting their throats was a very common practice they talked about, which for some reason the LAPD never ever looked into. A group that would do something like this because it's a heinous crime. It took more than somebody really angry. It took someone with an intent to be extremely vicious to, get the ire of people up, which is exactly what was accomplished.
I think you made some good points there. What do you think? What are your thoughts on those statements?
I can tell you all the language that they use is definitely stuff that I heard in my youth. In that, the mud people, the race trader, like I can name songs or
Yeah.
whatever. That's where you hear those words all the time.
That's interesting. I was hoping you'd have some history of that, given your past interactions with some of these folks. What's these ideas of cutting? Like, do they say, is that a real thing? I don't know if I made it that far. They chopping her head off, or is that what the goal was with Nicole Brown? It seems like, is that in the Turner Diaries? Is that professed within that sphere of influence?
Again, I haven't read that since like probably 20 years. I was actually going to go back and read it before we brought podcast, but it's just life happens, right? But I would say that I would say that I do feel like there was heads on pikes in that, kind of Game of Thrones type thing.
Well, that's interesting, because I'm not gonna lie to you, dude. Because the thing that comes to mind when I hear that, is Charles Manson's statement of "make it look witchy." You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do feel like there's heads on pikes in that, and I think it might even be depicted in some of the second-rate images that are in the book. Again, I highly recommend, and I think I can actually go ahead and listen to, because I'll just listen to it these days to get that.
I've never read it. I'm gonna definitely get a look at it there based on your recommendations, sir. Because again, I'm willing to read things that I don't agree with. I gain facts from lots of places, but it's just,
you read the manifestos to see where the operations are, right?
Well, precisely. I suppose the only thing that's really turned me off from it is the fact that I don't know. I'm often already accused of. I've had a long history of being accused of Hitler's Youth, which I'm just like, well, how is that even a thing? You know what I mean? Because blonde hair, blue eye kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's an easy thing to say to someone who's got blonde hair and blue eyes, I suppose.
But the one thing I will say is, if you look at like the Hitler Youth videos compared to the education system within North America, Canada, USA, which one do you want your fucking kids going to? Well, I mean, if you're Jewish, you probably don't want your kids going to the Hitler Youth, but pretty much anyone else.
I also don't see a lot of fucking Hitler's Youth with a lot of red faces. You know what I mean? not a lot of Scots Irish Cherokee within the Hitler's Youth community. Just saying, it's just I'm already accused. I'm just saying, I've avoided these, even reading about these kind of things. I'm already accused. I just didn't like the subject.
Yeah, no, again too, it's I would say it's a fantastic read from the perspective of a manifesto. Like if you read Uncle Ted, if you read the tranny fucking from Melissa Joan Hart, I mean, yeah, it's definitely worth the 120 pages, 150 pages of.
I've read the tranny manifesto. Yeah, I've read the tranny manifesto. That's reeks of so much hypnotic mind control assassins, not unlike Buffalo Jared Revisa, another trans-apocalypse mind control assassin on a multi-state murder spree. Sound familiar?
So if you think about how many operations that they blamed that book on, you have to at least read and again, anyone who's into this, you have to read that to at least see why they blame all these fucking missions on that fucking book.
Yeah, but if they're the ones who created it, for sure. But if they're the ones who created it, they're creating it to create this framework in which they can do those things you just described.
Yeah. But again, too, I always say, like, even with good old Bill Hicks, I say controlled opposition is still opposition. You have to recognize the control.
That's a good point. And let's check out our next clip here.
Timeline. Now, with regard to Mark Furman, Stephen Singular, there were allegations presented in a Newsweek article, these coming, according to Newsweek, from sources who had confided to an LAPD investigation of Mark Furman, that he was allegedly the head or involved with a white supremacist group within LAPD called WASP. I've never heard any confirmation of these charges. Now, your source contacted you saying, as he is quoted in the book your book Legacy of Deception, that neo-Nazis are not just on the fringes of society anymore, but they're within the system and doing a lot of damage. Of course, Mark Furman did retire to the area where there's been a lot of neo-Nazi and Aryan Nations activity, and the Order, the group you wrote about in Talk to Death, had some of their operations based in that area.
And we know Furman's deep connections before he even moves there, right? Like it's to me, it just speaks of this larger system. He's getting top cover over the years because he's done a lot of rat shit, cleaning stuff up, etc. Right?
Well, the one thing that when I was listening to that, there's two things that kind of popped in my head real quick. Is wasn't
Please.
it the Rampart? Wasn't it the Rampart division where they were said to have like the criminal gangs, fucking Mexican,
Yeah,
black, and Aryan within the
absolutely.
department?
And I believe
And
he
then
worked for Rampart in the early 1980s. He was
and
just
there
promoted to
was
detective right before this. Like they basically
yeah,
promoted the detective for this purpose, and then they said, "Mark, you're fired / retired. Go to Idaho." Where
and
right
then
around that same place in Idaho where he moved to, right around that compound in Hayden Lake, is I've
yeah.
tracked no fewer than 20 retired LAPD detectives live there.
Yeah, and then the other thing that popped in my head, didn't that fucking horrible network Hulu make a show about all the LAPD gangs, kind of just like rub it in your face that they're running gangs within their state protection organization, and then there's also the rumor about Kamala Harris and the Knights Templar police. But those are just a few things that popped off
For
when you were
sure,
talking
dude.
about gangs in the police.
For sure, but let's ruminate on that one notion for a second. That there's a much larger network here within this, again, the underground Nazi Fourth Reich franchise.
Yeah.
How do you have such a large contingent of retired LAPD detectives living in and around this huge Nazi compound that uses the planning stages and ending stages for numerous multi-year terror campaigns of domestic Nazi terror that go on 10-year anniversaries? Like, how is this a thing?
Again, the anniversaries isn't necessarily a surprise to me. Now, one thing that I'm thinking
What I'm getting
of,
at there is, how is it repeating?
yeah,
And it involves the same people. I mean, why are all
yeah,
see what I'm saying? Like,
no. I'm
all these
saying,
connections we've
I said,
established, right?
yeah, I'm saying it's obvious, but the one thing that when you ask how you have it in Idaho, isn't that where the Franklin scandal or one of these other fucking banks that's been is running out of the fucking Idaho directly?
Well, correct, sir. Nugan Bank, John Michael Hand, and Weaver. I'd like to close that out here in 1 second when we go back to Elohim City real fast and Furman.
Yeah.
I'll go take us through two more clips here,
Yeah.
if you will.
Okay.
Actually 3 more clips. I want to do one more on this anniversary business.
Tall order. Could you briefly sum up some of the major points of the OJ Simpson conspiracy as outlined by your anonymous informant Skinner?
Well, yeah, it's a blood oath, which is true. In the conspiracy to murder Nicole Brown Simpson reveals the motive for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. The vehicle is to frame a well-known black man for the vicious murder of a white woman. And this would create an environment for a race war, at least in their belief. Again, a carbon copy of the Sharon Tate LaBianca murders. But it lays out on October 9th, 1993, a meeting of what he called the Cause, Christian Aryan Underground Special Forces, that they held a meeting near Sandpoint, actually close to the Aryan Nation of Hayden Lake, where the plot was hatched, designed to create this atmosphere. All right? It was all to coincide, or as closely as possible, with this 10th anniversary. They seem to have this belief that everything's got to be on some sort.
Back to Sandpoint, Hayden Lake, right?
Question. Since we're talking about anniversaries, was the Manson LaBianca Tate, was that 69 or 70?
Yes, sir. August 9th through August 11th, 1969, and the state of Idaho is currently trying Brian Koberger, beginning August 11th, 2025.
Okay. No, because I was just trying to put that, but that's like 24 years. So that's 24, but I don't really see a connection that way. I was just trying to figure out the anniversary on that because they kind of brought the two up as being related. But, I mean, it'd be interesting to
I will accept that challenge, sure, and get back to you.
It'd be interesting to look at the number of days between the August 9th and what was it, June something? See what that number of days says on the day calendar. Whether it's The year, the dates, the months, there's probably some sort of number in there that's going to be the cult number.
Well, I don't disagree, and you bring up a good point about this August, because I'm convinced there is some, and I don't want to deter us any further, but I will take that challenge. We will have that conversation in the future for sure, because you're onto something, and I have some additional. That's what I was saying, and just that's what I was trying to drive home. Is lo and behold, it's still is resonating today in the Idaho 4 case, because the state is demanding against all these other shit. The fucking judge sealed an order about sealing his order. So he's like, oh, no, I'm going to seal this, and then I'm going to write a different order to seal that order. So go fuck yourselves. That's his underlying theory of existence these days, Judge Hippler. He says, you guys can go fuck yourself. This ain't America.
Well, I would like to point out that December 7th, if it was to have a child, it would be just September 11th in 9 months, but 40-week gestation period. So, I mean, that's something to kind of, when you look at it,
how dare you use math and science and reason? So in regards to this underground network and that court that he was just talking about in the national meeting, again, the LAPD knew about Furman's connections to all this when the trial was going on. A 42-page internal affairs investigation was produced starting in February of 95. A month before he testified, a month after the trial began, and concluding in October, a month after the trial concluded. But they knew about this shit, dude. And in that 42-page file, it details, according to these two authors who had access to this information, details all of these white nationalist connections of Furman. Because if you remember in the trial, they played an audio tape from some fucking filmographer, director of some nonsense from 10 years prior, as if that was relevant. Because again, both sides were in on the game.
Now, was that convention at the Hayden Lake?
Yeah, well, it was in Sandpoint.
Did they give a date? Or did they give a date on it? Because actually, no, I'm thinking the one that. So I'm wondering if the Bo Grits. I think that was actually the Tom Grady compound in Alabama. So no, I was just putting that in my head, but no, I'm off.
I was gonna say I can replay it. I think you said October 6th.
Yeah, but the other one was so the other one they're talking about when they bought the night vision goggles, that was in Alabama at the Tom Grady fucking compound. So I was just wondering.
I got two more clips for us before we can bring it home on Randy Weaver and John Michael Hand, money laundering. I just talked about the Material Assistance Command the other day. I went on a fucking rant about it. I don't even remember if it was on my show or someone else's show relative to this fucking Iran-Contra stuff. Because again, that's right. It was. I was doing no disregard. I was talking about. I have another show coming up here in a couple weeks. With Austin Wade Picard. We're gonna do a comparison of lethal weapon relative to Iran-Contra and Idaho-Contra. And if you would like to join us, sir, you're welcome to do so.
Yeah, and I brought up Thomas Posey for you today for the Central Military.
You honestly just provided the fucking the connecting principle and all of that, and that is Thomas Posey, and all of these activities directly related to that stuff too, and all this damn drug trafficking and money laundering. But that's what I'm saying. If you'd like to join in that conversation, I'll be happy to send you the invite to join us. But that'll be in two. That'll be on. Actually, wait. That's on July 9th. I apologize. That'll be a little bit further away, but I'll let you know. I'll send you a week or two out for sure.
Yeah. Most definitely. I can jump in.
This is detail, though. The Thomas Posey and Material Assistance Command is very key, dude, to all of this stuff. And with John Michael Hand, all this business. So, but last note here, connecting Furman to this underground network and to Elohim City, back to all this stuff. So then we'll get into that.
We should note again that Newsweek did carry information taken from sources within LAPD personnel files alleging that Furman was involved with a group called White Anglo-Saxon Policemen, or WASP. I've never heard of any formal legal proceeding against Furman, so we should note that for formal legal purposes. However, those allegations reportedly coming.
So it seems like that internal affairs investigation yielded some results that would indicate that there was accurate statements that he was a figure in that operation.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. White Anglo-Saxon. I mean, it
sounds kind of KKK, right?
Well, to me, I mean, let's be honest. Was Winston Churchill really a fucking enemy of Adolf Hitler, or was he just a dialectic to
I don't know.
divide and sow
I'm just burning
division?
myself right now. Give me a second. I'm listening. If you're
Yeah.
wondering what I'm doing, my cherry
No.
fell my doobie on me, and I'm just trying to clean up the mess.
Surprisingly, I don't actually smoke weed. I barely drink.
Yeah, I don't smoke weed either.
Psychedelics and psychedelics and caffeine and nicotine. That's it, man.
I don't know about Winston Churchill. I will tell you this, sir. He was a hereditary member of the Society of the Cincinnati, the secret society that started America. And on that note, let's talk about more Nazis.
That Strassmeyer, Andrew the Strassmeyer, issued a statement from Berlin through his attorney Kirk Lyons, who is the executive director of CAUSE.
We should bear in mind who, maybe fill the audience in who Andreas Strassmeyer is.
Well, he's you can probably do that a lot better than me, but he's an intriguing character that goes back to intelligence over in Germany.
Would you like me to sum up real briefly his
role?
Andreas Strassmeyer was one of the major security people at a white supremacist compound called Elohim City in Oklahoma, headed up by a fellow named Robert Millar. Several of the key people involved with Elohim City had previously been implicated in an alleged plot to blow up the Oklahoma City building. A fellow named James Ellison was associated with that alleged plot. Also, Dennis Mahone, a fellow whose name crops up in the context of your investigation and who had done white supremacist recruiting in LAPD. Strassmeyer admits to knowing Timothy McVeigh, although he says he was not involved in the bombing. He would not discuss details because he said, although he was not involved in the bombing, quote, running your mouth gets you into trouble, unquote. Timothy McVeigh called Elohim City a couple of weeks before the bombing, asked to speak with Andreas Strassmeyer. We should note that a white supremacist named...
See, you had mentioned that earlier. It's fascinating. There's all this network. They have representatives from all doing a lot of stuff that was identified back then, not just Strassmeyer, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, too, it's a known fact that the FBI allowed Strassmeyer to smuggle himself back out through Mexico, return to Germany, and do his interrogation via phone. Not even
a Vatican passport.
Not even flyover agents, but a phone interview on a fucking terrorist attack on your own soil. Not a request for extradition, not even send an embassy agent, just a phone call.
Well, here's a great comment from Lucy Morningstar, the Princess of Darkness. Hayden she's a wealth of information on all things Idaho. Yeah. Hayden is closer to Rathdrum than Pullman is to Moscow. That is great. That is great context to understand their Princess of Darkness. I appreciate it. So, because Rathdrum is, again, we're talking about where the three of the victims are, right? Where one of the victims' uncles is an ardent Nazi who's in jail for murder, and other family members of that same family appear to be Hell's Angels, according to the T-shirts they wear at family Christmas time.
Or are they just supporters? There's a little bit.
Well, my understanding is you can't be wearing that unless you're a member, and it seems like they said, "Oh, Christmas photo."
Okay,
let me get my nice Hell's Angels T-shirt on. So this is,
but it's more like an AFFA than an support, right?
Yeah, I'm saying they're probably a member. They're right there. They all live right there in the compound, right where these plans get hatched out every 10 years. With these Nazis, right, where the FBI does shootouts and they find guns and stuff. If the FBI is running, I don't care who's running it, they just keep doing the same hood rat shit in the same place over time, dude. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that you have a compound like that and you don't make it, I mean, they just must be lucky that they don't have the Philadelphia police and they're not a black move,
I'm glad you said compound because I found that Corbett report video. I wasn't going to play the whole thing, but I wanted to bring up that. Please continue. I want to bring up the part about the trucks we were talking about.
Yeah.
So Strassmeyer, he's John Doe number 2, right? I know we kind of touched on it earlier, right? Like that's what you were in agreement. We were in agreement about that, right? If not,
I would say that I would say that, like they say that global warming is consensus science. I would say for people who actually delve into this, that's a fucking consensus. But I mean,
I like your style, sir. I like your style. It is weird though that they would murder this Trinidad Mormon fella, right? You know what I mean?
Well, no, it's not that weird because let's be honest, right? Would the local fucking sheriff, would the fucking local police, or just a low-level FBI interrogator have the knowledge of Strassmeyer? They might have enough to say that he looked like him, and they fucking genuinely thought that he was this John Doe number 2, because there's enough reason to believe it, right?
Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird that they would murder this Mormon fella who's from the same, who has the same hometown as Philip Van Adder folks? Philip Van Adder's father's from Logan County, West Virginia. His grandfather's from Logan County, West Virginia. His grandfather's from Logan County, West Virginia. His grandfather's from Logan County, West Virginia, where my forefather founded the place. So what I'm saying is, like, this is a very small environment, and to have multiple parties in these networks they go back to the same area. The Trinities go back to Lincoln County and Logan County as well. And so what I'm saying is was he perhaps targeted?
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
In addition to the, he's a convenient John Doe number 2, right?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. But
Charles Manson also hails just across the river from Logan County and Pikeville, Kentucky. Is his roots.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I brought up the Poisoner in Chief and Whitey Bulger's criminal time in Kentucky, and Charles Manson would burn the school allegedly, if you believe his mythos, in like fucking grade 3 in Kentucky, and went to fucking penitentiary there before he kind of got MK Ultra too.
Yes, sir. He went to the Chillicothe Boys Reformatory in Ohio, where he met Edward Wayne Edwards. And I'll be covering him on Sundays in 2 weeks on Operation GCD, the serial killer you've never heard of. But also relative to these parapolitical events in Logan County, West Virginia, and you mentioned the Franklin scandal, and the guy who's running the front operation for that scandal, the Henry Vincent's running the mortuary where they're swiping all them credit cards and running all them hooker operations. Henry Vincent's from fucking Logan County, West Virginia. In fact, in Nick Bryant's story, he describes having to go down there to go find Henry Vincent. You know who Henry Vincent's attorney was?
Shapiro or Kardashian? I don't know.
You're near the target, sir, but not quite on. It is the OJ case. His attorney in the Franklin scandal situations, they're running that mortuary to do all these spook, operations, running these credit cards and stuff that goes directly to the highest levels of power in this country. And again, it goes right back to Logan County, West Virginia, which I have questions. This is my home, man. This is where my family's been. Again, we go back there as far as the Van Adders. I just recently realized all those Van Adders in my family tree are Philip Van Adder's family. I had no fucking idea. I'm not clueless sometimes, I suppose. But yeah, Henry Vincent's attorney was Greta Van Susteren in those matters.
Oh, the CIA agent.
Yeah, the one we first, the Scientologist, the one we first learned about as being a media anchor during the OJ Simpson case. This brand new trial coverage. We get all these new media stars, right? One of those media stars is Scientologist Greta Van Susteren.
Yeah, but isn't she a known CIA agent from the feminist movement? Or am I getting the wrong Greta?
I would argue she's actually we're semantics. Yeah, she's a spook, dude. She's definitely a spook. She's Scientologist. Her husband was Scientologists. Scientology all over OJ stuff. F. Lee Bailey is directly connected to Iran Contra.
Yeah. That was my third guess. I wondered when it was Van Susteren, but
so F. Lee Bailey's running bank in Florida, owned by BCCI. We talked about them earlier in 1993, year before the situation. That bank has got $1.5 billion in junk bonds from Leon Black. Leon Black just went into a deal with Scott Green,
the
University of Idaho.
He's a Canadian media mogul, Leon Black.
Leon Black? No, he's the Wall Street guy.
No, he's a Canadian mogul. I'm pretty sure he is.
Is he?
I'm pretty
Canadian?
sure. I'm pretty sure he's a media mogul out of Canada originally, unless I'm getting the wrong Leon.
Well, you might be correct.
If you look it up,
he might be Canadian. He looks kind of Canadian, to be quite honest with you. So when he
yeah,
said that,
if you look it up while you play the next clip, I'm pretty sure he's Canadian media mogul.
Well, when you said that, he looks Canadian in my head. I was like, yeah, he looks Canadian. No, that we're done with the clips. I just, if you wanted to bring it home on the Material Assistance Command, Ruby Ridge and John Michael Hand. Who is John Michael Hand?
Well, I'm not going to speak too much on the hand stuff because again, that's going to be off topic and it's going to be fuzzy in my head. But I would, I said to you in our little chat, I'm like, wasn't Sammy Weaver 14 when he was killed, right? And that's like I said, you got David Lane, you get the 14 words. So again, they're throwing their fucking gematria or their numerology in there, right? And then, like I said, that now that we had a conversation, I'm really starting to think, like, was all Robert J. Matthews a fucking mythos? Because he was a fantastic oral speaker, probably the best in America since Lou Rockwell or whatever the fuck in that movement, right? And then, I must point out, maybe all of us have to reevaluate Ruby Ridge, Ruby Bridges, because to me, you have racial divisions along both lines with those two events, and it's not past these controllers to use keywords or sentences to give away the operation. If we're willing to pay attention, I always say people are willing to look for that false flag, but no one looks for the flag.
Those are some good points, sir. I do appreciate that. And if I may make some commentary on what I see from this situation, and let you give me some feedback here. So I see Weaver and Ruby Ridge, and this is 95. What is this? What date is this?
Yeah.
April of 95?
No, Ruby Ridge was 92.
April of 92.
It was before Waco. It was before Waco. It was before.
August of 92.
Before Waco.
Holy shit. August of 92.
Yeah.
I got you. I'm tracking now. Okay. I'm just trying to put things
August 9th? Where is that? Where is that in relation to the Manson dates?
Right. It's shortly after. It's close though. It's pretty close.
Okay.
The one thing that interests me around those dates is the end of the dog days of summer, given all this serious worship and these ancient alien cargo cults. I didn't want to go full process though with this, but I'll just close it out here with some of my thoughts here. And I do appreciate your time, sir. And I want to hear some of your thoughts on what I think is going on here relative to Idaho being a long-standing operations or epicenter. We'll call it some sort of safe haven, if you will, even for a lot of this hood rat shit relative to Iran Contra and so forth and so on. So John Michael Hand's a Green Beret Special Forces dude who's working for the Material Assistance Command there, or the run by Posey, the fellow there that got prosecuted for the night vision goggles, right? In Viet fucking Nan. So he's running we see him running a bank that goes under in 1980 in Australia, Nugan Hand Bank. Michael Nugan, he's like, I'm out here. He commits suicide, Australian lawyer. On the board of that bank, we see it's full of CIA agents and operatives, including William Colby, the director, right? Former director.
Who's a fantastic swimmer.
Great swimmer, loved a canoe on the Potomac late at night after he left his entire dinner on his home and without eating it on his kitchen table. So his son was a primary witness against Orenthal J. Simpson in the state of California versus Orenthal J. Simpson. That's probably a different story altogether, or the exact same story. But anyhow, back to the Nugan Hand Bank, John Michael Hand. He goes, look, dude, I'm going to go the way of Bob Cocaine Evans. My name is Bennett. I wasn't in it. He just disappears. Goes the way of Houdini, because that's what Bob Cocaine Evans does every time he gets busted for, murder, cocaine trafficking. He's just like, look, dude, not me. I'm out. Gives them the old Vegas routine, make sure the cameras can see the dealer's got nothing in their hands. So he just walks away. So John Michael Hand does that. 35 years later, they find him living in Idaho Falls, Idaho. So the reason that when this bank fails, then that bank I was saying earlier in your documents that was obviously, to me, in my opinion, and I'll find the evidence later, the early onset of BCCI, which is the next operation they roll up into, which again goes back to, the whole board when that fails because Leon Black's Ponzi scheme goes fucking shits the bed. The Drexel Burnham Lambert junk bond scheme. F. Lee Bailey's bank owns the majority of those junk bonds, $1.5 billion. BCCI owns 28% of F. Lee Bailey's bank. when all the dominoes fall, and then they realize the Vatican and fucking CIA are running a bank out of the Bahamas that owns this bank out of Miami that's doing business with these junk bonds. These are the same people doing hood rat shit still today, is my opinion. And again, we see the special forces operations, aspects going all around the Idaho 4 situation. Fort Bragg specifically, and again, the 7 special forces group specifically. But we see John Michael Hand living in Idaho. We see Randy Weaver. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, he was part of the same Material Assistance Command, right?
I don't remember. I do believe he had military pass, but then he kind of resigned, and he allegedly took his family to live off land, right? But he did have some sort of military pass.
Well, he was definitely stationed at Fort Bragg. There is a dispute whether or not he was special forces. I will agree with that.
Yeah. No.
He was at Fort Bragg at a very, very important time, which I've discussed, and I'm sure you're familiar with the early onset of these drug operations that we're describing through the Material Assistance Command, smuggling, heroin in from Asia through the coffins through Fort Bragg. So this is the same time Randy Weaver's there. This is the same time Jeffrey McDonald is victim to his whole family getting murdered. 4 people murdered in their home and brutally murdered in the middle of the night. The same circumstances we see in Moscow, Idaho, 4 college students murdered brutally in their home just off campus in the middle of the night. Just saying, I see a lot of repeating patterns, but we see this special forces operation. You point out Posey. We have Hand up there as well, right? So there seem to be connections if because Weaver's connected to Hayden Lake, right?
Yeah. And the one thing that I said, I should listen to my own advice, but I probably won't. I said, you should read the Turner Diaries, because, it's kind of the manifesto when you get to, but at the same time, I should take my own advice and, I should watch more movies. But, when you're talking about all this, the first 2 things that popped in my head, like I said earlier, they like to make movies about the mythos of the fucking characters. And then you have the BCCI, the International, and what was the other one? There was another one that you mentioned there that was already had a. So again, they did that entire movie with George Clooney, I think, about the BCCI scandal, but they still called it ICCD. And
wait a second, I'm not familiar with this film. I'm gonna have to watch this.
It's the International or something. It was George Clooney, ICCD Bank, something like that. I'll find the title for you if that's not it.
Is it Clive Owen and not Clooney? Is that perhaps?
Clive Owen. Okay, yeah. Like I say, I don't follow Hollywood. I don't follow Hollywood, but no. If you look at that, it should be ICCB.
I hate Clive Owen. That's the reason why I've never watched this film. I think he's a horrible actor.
No, it's the BCCI movie. It's literally the story of BCCI, and they call it ICCB in that movie.
That's exclusively what I am watching. Otherwise, I would never watch this dog shit film. I only say it's a dog shit film because my distaste for Clive Owen. It's purely subjective, so I recognize that.
Yeah, but if that's the right one, if you look at this synopsis, it'll say it's ICCB Bank, and they talk about them fucking gun trafficking, etc.
It's inspired by the Bank of Credit and Commerce International scandal of the 1980s. It's fucking Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs. Agrees. It's right here, dude.
And wasn't Robert Mueller directly involved in that investigation, or was it possibly James Comey?
Dude, you're getting
or both of them.
Don't get me started on Bob Mueller here, bud. I will be happy to discuss that with you at a later date for sure. But what do you think is going on here? Is Idaho some sort of this? So we see Sam Bankman-Fried bought out, and we see a guy from Iran-Contra BCCI stuff, creepy John Chalopin, French dude from Bahama Bank. We see him as a direct connection to this Idaho situation with Sam Bankman-Fried buying out a small rural bank in Washington, doing a cash for crypto scandal that has been swept under the rug.
Oh, fuck. Speaking of banking, that's Dylan Mulvaney.
Oh, Dylan Mulvaney? What do you got?
Yeah. His granddaddy was the largest bank collapse in the 70s in California in American history, largest in American history. His granddaddy ran that fucking bank into the ground.
Oh man, I have a lot of ideas on that whole family. I understand what you're saying, sir. That whole family, I got a lot of ideas on that family. A lot of very
It's
society,
just funny that
lot of
it's just
society
funny that
related ideas, if you will.
Yeah, it's just funny that we're talking all these banks, and then you get this fucking thing
You
being
ain't
pushed as like,
you ain't
yeah,
kidding. You ain't kidding. So we
yeah,
talked how Ted Bundy was an assistant to the upper echelon of the
yeah,
politics and
yeah,
power
yeah,
in Washington State. We
yeah,
see this new money laundering operation in Washington State. We see all the hood rat Nazi shit going on in both states, Idaho and Washington,
yeah,
including the Kehoe brothers and gang, including Furman and gang and whatnot. And we see
yeah.
that the special
Oh,
forces, specifically this
oh,
kind of Iran-Contra component of Fort Bragg National Security Council ran kind of component
the
Material
one
Safety
thing,
Command. You know what I mean? We see
yeah,
that aspect seemingly accepted there in hiding, and we see
the one thing that I would want to point out though is when we're talking about, and again to get back to the Aryan Nations compound there specifically in Hayden Lake. I mean, I don't know what the land price and the land taxes are in Idaho, but for the amount of fucking land and the amount of followers, you should be looking into some shell corporations on how they're fucking paying for that
well,
shit.
I'm glad you said that because that's where I
Was
was
it the
heading.
military? Was it the Knights of Malta? Was it like that
Yeah,
1978 case?
that's
Um,
what I'm saying, dude. So what are we looking at? A situation where there's money laundering is up there because it's convenient to their funding of their operations of this shit, and this is an epicenter of, your Knights of Malta, this military assistance, special forces command stuff, CIA and FBI. And you might think FBI and CIA, those are different organizations. Well, you mentioned Peter Strzok. He testified that he was the head of counterintelligence for both the CIA.
yeah.
A dual-seated position is I literally fucking spit. I was drinking, so I just spit out of my mouth. I'm like, did this motherfucker just say he's dual-seated as head of counterintelligence for the FBI and CIA? I'm like, that's fucked up.
Well, again, talking about Barry Soetoro, the one really that I would say everyone should look into is the Inspector General Stork. He was like DOD, he was CIA, he was DHS. I think he was on a bunch of them, and his name was Stork, if I'm not mistaken. But that one's just kind of like, he was the Inspector General of like fucking 3 or 4 different military type of operations. So, there's a lot of shit that was obviously being run under him because you don't put the same person in fucking that many positions. But again, too, it'd be really interesting to see, as we're talking about it, and I'm sitting here thinking about Hayden Lake. It'd be really interesting to see if it's unincorporated land. Is it possibly its own territory, such as Disney and District of Corruption?
Challenge accepted.
It'd be very interesting to see because it does seem like Idaho would be a good place where you'd have some unincorporated land where
Here's what I can tell you.
pretty easy to get away with that around.
These are the large scale aspects I'm concerned about with what you're describing. Is the Mormons have largely owned that land. There's some large scale fundamentalist Mormons, a very wealthy group that folks don't talk about that own a lot of, especially with the northern Idaho stuff. He's challenge accepted because I don't know where the lines draw up there between Nazis, Mormons, and who's who and who are the feds. Because again, there's so much Fed activity. You might be talking about a whole federal compound up there that is owned through shell corporations.
Yeah.
These people
and let's be honest, you might look into and see that Wild Bill Donovan bought all the fucking land and donated it to Walt Disney. Oh shit, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, I mean, I got some ideas of how land is transferred up in these regions too. So it's a good point you make there, sir. So I appreciate your time, Jenna. We've covered a lot of information here tonight. Do you have any? Thoughts you can offer?
No, like I say, I wrote down Poisoner in Chief and I wrote down that Newsweek article, and I'll drop that shit in the chat within 20, 30 minutes. I'll do and then,
No worries, again, man. Hit me up with them links tonight or tomorrow, and I'll get them in the show notes for folks to check out. And
on Twitter,
on replay.
On Twitter, I'm Troublemaker Jonah. Troublemaker Jonah on Instagram. I still have Facebook, but I don't use that shit. And Troublemaker Jonah on fucking Gmail. But I'll be honest, I live on a farm in a trailer, so I may not always respond.
I like your style in the same way, sir. I'll make sure your Twixter, and social media is in the show notes as well.
Yeah. And this is a great show.
It sounds like we got some pens for a future conversation. So yeah, did you have any last words before we go?
No, it was a great show, and hope everyone enjoyed themselves.
I do believe they did, sir. We've left them with a lot of probably. I'm not gonna lie to you, dude. Their brains are probably their brain holes are probably just blown out, just as mine is at the moment. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 non-Melissa Joan Hart related tabs open. I equally have 7 Melissa Joan Hart related tabs open as well. That's a different story altogether. So I appreciate your time, sir, and I appreciate all the as always. You're a man with many details, and I definitely respect and appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll schedule something else. Everyone.
Sure. And I'll be in touch about the Idaho 4, Idaho Contra, Range Contra lethal weapon comparison we're going to do. But I do appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah,
and you have a nice evening, folks to the interwebs. Same to you.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, but check your 6. Look in that garbage can, 'cause you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.